That's it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Just swallow my gum. Come back and spit it out.
Thank you. It being 7 o'clock, I'll call the November 10th meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. Please join me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and I want to announce that Chelmsford Telemedia is broadcasting this meeting live and is videotaping it for later rebroadcast. If anybody else here is audio videotaping this meeting, please let me know at this time. Thank you. Okay, we have a couple of public service announcements this evening. First is Vivian Merrill.
Good evening, everyone. Vivian Merrill, 23 Maple Road, here to announce the annual Rabies and Microchip Clinic sponsored by the Chelmsford Animal Control Office and Chelmsford Animal Hospital. This year it's being held on Saturday, December 6th from 10 a.m. to noon. It's held rain or shine. Rabies shots are still $15 each. Microchips are still $25 each. You are responsible for registering your own microchip. All the animals must be on a leash or a carrier. We'll do dogs, cats, whatever you want to have done. The location is at the Chelmsford Dog Pound, which is over at 2 Old North Road, right in front of the police station. And if you have any questions, the animal control officer's phone number is 978-256-0754. We also have dog licenses. Those are $15 or $20, depending on your situation. For more information on that, you can call the town clerk's office. Any questions? Comments? Shenanigans? No? Good. Life is good.
Thank you. Okay, next up is Peggy Dunn.
Peggy Dunn, 2 Bridge Street, and Town Rep, Precinct 1. I'm here to have our kickoff for the 2015 Chelmsford Center Art Walk. We did this back in 2012. I did not do it last year. I don't know if you remembered it or not. It says up there, and there are some photographs. Anyway, so we're sort of rolling it out tonight. It doesn't happen until February. It's the first weekend of Chelmsford, of Winterfest, will be when this starts. And we have applications for the artists. All artists in Chelmsford are invited to submit an application, and they have to draw a little sketch of whatever they feel they would like to present. Our theme is Chelmsford, a town for all seasons, so they can paint any season or whatever they like. We are going to take all the work that comes in, and then we'll judge it, and we're going to pick 20. We can only do 20 windows because we give the artists a $75 stipend, so it would get to be too expensive. You can't read that, but that's what I've got in front of here, and it just says what, why, when, where, and all, and it's in the center. And last time we did it, all the businesses in the center did participate, and there's some photos there. This was one, that was the Perham Cider Mill, which Georgia Spanos did, and it's beautiful watercolors. It was hard to take the pictures because the sun was hitting the glass and reflecting back, so it kind of makes all the pictures look funny looking. And so that was a favorite place. Last time it was favorite place, people, or thing. And then Helen Moriarty did this. Everybody knows Lance Wilder, and he's her favorite artist, so she did a display of all her work. He gave her a lot of original drawings that she put up there. And then the next slide is Johanna Ray, And these were favorite places. And the painting to the left is the cranberry bog being harvested. And then the one to the left of it is that was the second Winterfest, and that's skating up at Roberts Field on the pond up there. And she also has a cardinal up there. And then down below are some really art photographs of the Unitarian Church, the memorial, and that sort of thing. So those were her favorite places, and that was part of the theme. But that's what it's going to look like in case you didn't see it the first time. And also, just a little, by the way, I don't know if you remember, but about 6 months ago, a year ago, we came and had you sign an application for a cultural district. And then in September, they came and did the site walk. And we won't hear back from them until January, but they were very positive about it. And what we're doing is we're jumping the gun a little bit, and this is going to be our first cultural district event. We now have a cultural district collaborative that will meet every quarter, and we just met a week ago. And so Kathy and I said, this is going to be our first event. We don't have the designation yet, but we're going to do it anyway. And I think that gives you an idea of what's going on. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Good luck.
Wait, Peggy,
I
you
have a
have
general
question.
question. I don't know if it's for Paul or for Peggy, but who is running the Winterfest this year?
Do you want to answer?
Well, the town is.
okay.
Trish usually does that now.
Trish,
I
okay.
retired from Winterfest
No, I
back
know you
in
did. Yeah, I did.
2005.
Thank you. Thank you for all you did, though. before you
Yeah,
retired.
well, my pleasure. I enjoyed doing it. And this, we just decided to do as part of, it starts, when Winterfest ends, this starts.
Oh,
And
okay.
this is all the month of February.
Okay.
And
thank
we
you.
have a whole bunch of other stuff, but I left some sheets for you that you can read in your leisure, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're now at the open session part of this meeting. Anybody who has any comments, concerns that they'd like to share with the board is welcome to come forward now and tell us about that. What is that noise?
I think it's the projector.
Yeah,
projector's I made a note, I'll check on it tomorrow.
Mary, you're back.
Yes, I am back. Determined. If I lose, I lose, but at least I know
And just
when
for
I
the,
go upstairs,
And
I've
ju-
tried.
and just for the record, Mary, could you
I
please,
have sent out 149.
Mary, just for the record, could you please
Mary
identify?
Donovan, Tanglewood Drive in
Thank you.
Chelmsford. And I'm trying to save our fire station. I have called today, and I have found out that it is now on the National Historical Registry, and it is also on the State Historical Registry. I would like to get a feasibility study and/or some kind of petition to see if the bids or something that it can be renovated. I would like not only, I put in for a history museum and a information center, but I'm sure there are many other taxpayers out there would like to see something else other than having it torn down. I just found tonight that I may not be able to go to the town meeting next week to speak because I'm not a rep.
You can still
you can-
speak.
you can go.
You can still speak, even if you're
I
not a
can
rep, as
still?
long as you're a resident, yes.
Because I have a few taxpayers going with me, behind me. I've only had a few phone calls that do not want it. But I've had many people say they do, and they're anxious to see what else we can get without tearing it down. And it has been here for over 50-some-odd years, and having it know that it is on the historical registry in Boston, I was surprised, but glad. So I'm hoping, being here tonight, a lot of taxpayers that sit home and watch this meeting will come next week and back me up.
Okay.
I will be there, and I have many of these, and I have postcards that the town of Chelmsford does not have a postcard of anything available to anybody in town, that if you came into town to send a postcard to somebody in another state. There is a beautiful fire museum on Congress Street in Brookline. I have been in contact with them, and they think that if it is made into a museum with fire, police, EMTs, and veterans, and the town information center where we can get maps, souvenirs, postcards, it would be an asset to the town. At the moment, I'm too nervous. I'll see you next Monday night and go from there. But I hope all of you would help me to protect this fire. And I'm sorry, I have not been involved in too much of the politics in the town since we've gone to town reps. So I don't know the rules and regulations anymore, what I can do to push it. But if, another asset too, if by chance it's not made into a museum history, I would like to even see it made into accommodations to the veterans that are coming back into the country here and have no place to stay. Just another added effect.
Sure.
So hope to see you all next week.
We'll be
Please
there.
say no. Sorry, Paul Cohen.
All right, the town meeting's
But
gonna decide.
anyway,
Thank you.
I have plenty of these lovely brochures, which will be all over town.
Okay, thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm trying. And I haven't had that many calls at home saying they don't want it. I've just had a few. So I am not there all the time to answer either if they call my house, but I have an answer machine and I'll gladly call quickly back.
Okay.
See you next week.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anyone else for open session? Okay. Move on to committee vacancies.
Okay, committee vacancies as of November 10th, 2014. There is one vacancy on the Civic Committee. There are 2 vacancies on the Community Preservation Fund Committee, 2 vacancies on the Cultural Council, 1 vacancy on the Energy Conservation Committee, 1 vacancy on the Great Brook Farm Advisory Committee, 1 vacancy on the Historical Commission, 1 vacancy on the Land Management Subcommittee, and 1 vacancy on the Personnel Board. If you're interested in serving on a town board or committee, please fill out the committee application. It's available on the town website, www.townofchelmsford.us.
Madam Chairman, I just wanted to comment on it. I looked at a lot of towns that have websites, and we're not alone. They have a lot of vacancies in there. So it's not just us, but
Okay.
hopefully we can get some people excited and volunteer for some of our positions, but it's not unique to us.
Thank you. Okay, we have several licenses this evening. First one, Jack Cartel.
Good evening. I'm Jack Cartel of 4 Samuel Road. I'm here on behalf of Chelmsford Troop 75 petitioning for a roadside vendor license for our major fundraising activities for this year to commence shortly right after Thanksgiving for the next few weeks, weekends only.
And you want to tell us about the location and what it is?
The location is the Chelmsford Elks. Our intention is to sell Christmas trees, as I said, for fundraising to, I believe in the times from about 10 to 5 p.m., Saturdays and Sundays only, hopefully until all the trees are sold, and raise funds to support the troop for the coming year.
Okay.
Any additional questions?
Any questions for the applicant?
The wreaths, are they just the plain fresh fir wreaths, or are they decorated as well?
We're purchasing undecorated wreaths, and we have a plan to do some small decorations, bows and that, to kind of spruce them up, some additional value. Depends on how crafty our troop members are.
Okay, great. That's all I have.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve a roadside vendor license to Jack Cartel, Boy Scout Troop 75 at 300 Littleton Road from November 29th to December 20th for the hours of 10 o'clock a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m.
Weekends
On
only.
weekends.
Weekends only.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks. Okay, next up is Benton Burgess. Is he here? Okay, we'll go to Central Congregational Church. Anybody here from Central Congregational Church? Okay. How about Elmo's Flower Garden?
Good evening. My name is Richard Gaiero from Dracut, Mass. I'm here on behalf of Almo's Garden Center. Almo's is requesting a permit, license for a roadside vendor license to sell Christmas trees, wreaths, and kissing balls. Commence on November 28th through December 25th, Monday through Friday from 12 to 8, Saturday and Sunday from 8 to 8. We've been at that location now, I think this is our 6th or 5th year there.
Okay. Anybody have questions for the applicant?
Yeah, you said 11:28, and on this it says 11:23.
Well, my boss told me the 28th, that's,
Okay, well,
maybe,
Give him the earlier of the two?
I mean,
you don't have to, he doesn't have to start on 23rd.
No,
He can
We're
wait till
talking the
the-
day after Thanksgiving, which would be the 28th. That's probably the date they're looking for.
I believe that's what he told me today, was the 28th, I don't know.
Okay. Okay, any other questions for the applicant?
Since it's Monday through Friday, 12 to 8, do I need to change that motion or just keep it 8 to 8?
Again, yeah, again, on the application, it was 8 to 8,
Monday through Friday.
yeah.
Once again, today, he gave me the information, it was 12 to 8, and Saturday and Sunday is 8 to 8.
Okay, again, we can give you the extended hours in case you want to open earlier.
That's fine if
Okay.
it's possible.
Okay, just want to make sure. I make a motion to approve a roadside vendor license to Elmo's Flower Garden Center, Inc., 55 Graniteville Road, from November 28th to December 25th for the hours of 8 o'clock a.m. to 8 o'clock p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Did we have Mr. Burgess or somebody from Central Okay.
Benton Burgess. I live over on Second Lane. We're here to apply for a license to sell Christmas trees for the Travis Roy Foundation. This is something that we've done a couple of years now. It's a great fundraiser for the foundation. And recently, the foundation's been able to fund some research. They've helped families here in Chelmsford. They've done some really exciting research that I'd love to give a quick update if I could.
Sure.
Last year, a doctor had come up with an idea to implant a pacemaker at the base of at the spines of 4 individuals who have had spinal cord injuries, paralyzed for many years. Surprisingly, all 4 of them have been able to regain the ability to control their bowels and bladder, which is huge for somebody who's been injured in a spinal cord accident. And one of the people has now able to stand up and walk on his own. So this is the first time that an experiment has yielded results for all participants in the study, and they want to expand to 36 people. So what we're doing here helps fund part of that process. It also helps families who have experienced a spinal cord injury with getting ramps, computer equipment, car things to help them adjust back to normal life. So that's what we're hoping to do. Last couple of years, we've done it over at the softball fields here. This year, we're going to do it with the Chelmsford Little League. They've offered to let us use their parking lot. So, and it's very nice of them. So we're hoping to get the application this year and sell some more trees.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions for the applicant?
Make a motion to approve a roadside vendor license to Brenton Burgess at 128 Chelmsford Street from November 29th to December 23rd for the hours of 8 o'clock a.m. to 8 o'clock p.m.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good
Thank
enough.
you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody here from Central Congregational Church?
You want to do it anyway?
think we should do it anyway.
Okay.
I know Captain Fuss.
All right. They're regulars here anyway.
Yep.
so-
Okay. Make a motion to approve a roadside vendor license to Central Congregational Church at 1 Worthen Street from November 29th to December 23rd for the hours of 10 o'clock a.m. to 8 o'clock p.m.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks. Okay, first report this evening is John Souza for vacating a foreclosure.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Back in June, the town of Chelmsford received a foreclosure judgment for a residential property, just as a result of several years of unpaid property taxes. And in your packets, I provided you with a memo giving you all the background information on the case. After being in contact with the property owner's attorney, I'm pleased to report that on October 31st, the town's received full payment of all the outstanding amounts owed. So in consideration of the full payment of all the outstanding amounts, I respectfully request that the board vote to vacate the foreclosure judgment for this property. There's a motion in your packets and a form for you to sign.
Okay. Any questions for John?
Make a motion to vacate the final judgment covering the tax taking made against Elizabeth C. Quealy for unpaid taxes covering the property at 5 Drexel Drive, Chelmsford, upon payment of all taxes, interest, and charges due as provided under Mass General Law 69.
That's fine.
Second?
Okay, any other questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay, next up is our town clerk. Is she here?
Yeah.
She is.
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members.
Evening.
And thank you for affording me this opportunity to present to you this evening for your consideration an idea. We all know that many great things begin with an idea. In 1955, when the Drumhill Rotary at the intersection of Routes 3 and 4 were constructed, it began with an idea. In 1989, when Chelmsford chose to be visionary and changed from open town meeting to representative town meeting, that too began with an idea. And just last month, when we celebrated the opening of the Richard P. O'Neill Housing for Veterans on Manahan Street, that began with an idea. This evening, the board is invited to consider another idea that can be added to Chelmsford's long list of accomplishments. There is a quote that states, "Not every change yields an improvement, but every improvement requires change." What I am proposing this evening is an opportunity for improvement, and yes, it does indeed require change. I am cognizant that changing polling locations may pose an initial inconvenience for some voters. However, I am also quite confident that there will be many voters whose drive will be minimized and their voting experience will be a more welcoming one. At present, many voters from most precincts do not vote at polling locations within their geographic precincts. And beginning in 2016, voters will have the option to early vote, therefore not having to drive at the polling place on Election Day. Consolidating the 5 locations to 2 will enhance security and eliminate disruption at the 3 elementary schools that presently serve as polling locations, streamline the execution of elections, and will certainly achieve cost savings. Most importantly, the elementary schools that we use as polling locations have open doors all day on Election Day. Removing polling locations from the schools will be another step in the town's ongoing effort to enhance the safety of our youngest students. In addition, by removing elections from the 3 schools and consolidating precincts 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 at the McCarthy Middle School and precincts 2 and 3 at the Senior Center, we will eliminate the disruption that takes place at the elementary schools on Election Day and the day before when polling places are set up, and the day after when certain equipment gets retrieved. Reducing the number of polling locations will greatly enhance the efficiency with which we are able to plan for, staff, equip, set up, and run elections in Chelmsford. Increased efficiency will also save the town money. The current quantifiable savings is approximately $2,300 per election, which translates into a $53,000 savings for a 10-year cycle. But please note that this is a very conservative figure. I foresee that once we implement the consolidation and establish a pattern, we will realize additional cost savings. Nearly 30 years have gone by since our polling locations and the way Chelmsford conducts elections have been fully evaluated. When researching for this proposal, considerations were that the polling sites be at a convenient location, compliant with federal and state accessibility requirements, sufficient space inside the polling location, adequate parking, adequate lighting, and sufficient on-site storage to mitigate the risk of equipment damage and loss. I am pleased to report that to you this evening that feedback has been widespread and positive. With your approval, we will begin notifying voters, beginning with the 2015 town census, and the consolidation will begin with the April 7th, 2015 annual town election. I believe that this proposal is an ideal opportunity for Chelmsford to change how it conducts its elections in a more efficient, convenient, and less costly manner. Voting is not only a duty, it is a privilege granted to its citizens. And the polling places should reflect that sense of duty by being a warm, friendly, and inviting place for its citizens to make their choices. And at the same time, present an opportunity for the candidates to gather to greet those who are making their voting choices. Consolidating to the Senior Center and McCarthy Middle School, as we highlighted, will offer many efficiencies and will also offer more effective use of time and labor from the Public Works, Highway, and Facilities Departments, school personnel, police, and clerk's office staff involved with the pre- and post-election day preparations, as well as the ability for the town clerk staff to handle and respond to election day issues or problems in a more effective, expeditious, and accommodating manner, and instead of having to travel and negotiate 5 different sites. Therefore, expert staff from the town clerk's office will be on hand at the 2 polling locations during Election Day. The layout of the proposed polling places will afford a much more efficient voting experience, as there would be clearly identified flow of traffic throughout the polling places, which would greatly reduce much of the confusion and voter fatigue which is often experienced, especially during a presidential election or at the town election following the federal census, when many voters are redistricted and their precincts do change. There are numerous communities that have already consolidated their polling places. Some towns with comparable populations and precinct numbers are, and there are just a few here that I'm highlighting, Andover, population of 33,000 plus. Andover has 9 precincts, and all precincts vote at the high school for town elections. For state elections, 6 precincts vote at the high school and 3 precincts vote at the senior center. Franklin, population of 33,000 plus, 8 precincts, 1 polling location at the high school. Reading, population 24,000 plus, 8 precincts, 1 polling location at the high school. North Attleboro, population of 30,000, 9 precincts, 2 polling location, 7 precincts at the high school, 2 precincts at the Showcase Cinema, ladies and gentlemen. Those lucky voters, they get an election and a movie. North Andover, population of 28,000 plus, 8 precincts, 1 polling location at the high school. So, Madam Chair and board members, these towns all began their efforts to consolidate their polling places with an idea, a vision. And with your approval, Chelmsford, too, can add this idea to its long history of visionary accomplishments. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Honorina. I know we have some questions, so I'll start with
Yes,
just
and
a
I
couple.
also have a great team of supporters here this evening as well.
First of all, you mentioned the layout a couple of times. I wonder if you could kind of explain to the community how you would have 7 precincts voting at McCarthy School.
Sure. Well, we would, of course, leave precincts 7 and 8 in the small gym and the remainder of the 5 in the large gym.
Okay, and that's on the other side,
That is
physical other
correct.
side of
Mhm.
the building. And you feel like there's sufficient parking for that many?
Absolutely. In
Okay.
fact, Thad has done some studies with the parking, and we will have additional parking spaces than what we already have now.
Okay. Would school be closed that day?
On state elections day, yes, the schools have been very, very generous. They do close on state election day, and they strive to make an effort on town election days to have administrative professional day, so it's half a day of school for the children.
So now we would have just one school being affected, so still all the schools?
That is correct. The elementary schools, that was the primary objective of this proposal, is to take the elections out of the elementary schools.
Anybody else have a question? Go ahead,
Just a
Jen.
quick question.
Yes.
First of all, thank you. I think it's
You're
a
very
wonderful
welcome.
proposal. So on the list of supporters,
Mhm.
I see Barbara Scar, member Chelmsford
Mhm.
School Committee, as well as Superintendent Frank Tiano.
Mhm.
And was this presented to the school committee?
No, that she's just, she would just in the office, and it's an individual, not as a school committee member.
Okay, do you plan to present this to the school committee?
If
or
they
is-
would like for me to, absolutely. But
Okay,
we have already vetted it with Dr. Tiano through the schools, and it was approved, and it was a positive meeting.
okay. That's really my only
Okay,
question.
anybody else? Well,
Honorina, why,
Yes.
a lot of the samples you cited use the high schools. Why wouldn't we use the high school gymnasium and do the whole ball of wax there?
Mhm.
Plenty of parking.
Mhm. Well, at this time, it was not an option for the schools.
Bob, do you
Mhm.
mind? I would just say that there's a lot more activity there, a lot of
Mhm.
games
Right.
that would need to be postponed, rescheduled,
On election day, yeah,
perhaps.
okay.
That was the reason,
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Joyce, yes.
But other schools have done it, so that's why I brought it up.
Perhaps we have more
Yeah, okay.
games, athletics, a need for it. But
Mhm. That's it for me.
okay, and I know another question that I've been asked from
Mhm.
people that I've talked to this about. I mean, it would have been good if we'd had a location, say, in the northern part of town and the southern part of town. Can you explain why that isn't possible, or what options you might have checked on and just didn't prove feasible?
Thank you. Well, unfortunately, in Chelmsford, we don't have many venues that offer the square footage for polling locations nor the parking. Outside of the schools, the other options were, for example, to look at some of the Elks, I believe it is, the Elks Lodge, right?
But that was an issue with the alcohol.
Right, with the alcohol. Not a good idea, which we wouldn't even go
It's
there.
state law.
It's a state law that you cannot serve alcohol during polling locations. Besides, they would never agree to stop serving alcohol on the evening of an election day. So that's not an option. The other option was churches, but again, that too, the only thing that would have achieved was to take the elections out of all the schools, but yet I just didn't feel that was a proposal to bring to the voters of Chelmsford, just to move out to other places just to get out of the schools, because you still have just as many. The objective was to take them out of the schools, to streamline elections, and to achieve cost savings. If you're going to have the same number of polling places, that would not have achieved anything. So, but that is an excellent question, Madam Chair, and there was just nothing else available in Chelmsford.
Okay.
Question: Did you or Thad find any information regarding voter turnout with towns that had consolidated? Had it had any effect on voter turnout?
I wish I could say yes, but as we know, our neighbors, Bill Ricca, unfortunately not. Only, I mean, we know what the voter turnout is, and I called my fellow town clerks. Historically, unfortunately, town elections have a low voter turnout. We are hoping now with early voting being implemented, hopefully that will have voters vote, because again, they don't have to be inconvenienced to go on election day. But I wish I could guarantee that. But I'm hoping that having a centralized 2 polling places, it will encourage, because again, as you can see from the chart, we're also hoping to foster more a community engagement type of event where people can come together and see one another, and especially on town election day, to see their town officials. So hopefully that will draw out more voters. And I'm also excited about this opportunity because it is close for commuters, people that work. It's right there by Route 3, so I believe that it will be very accessible for folks that do commute or have other errands to do on the way.
Now given that the polling places would be basically centralized, would you change where you would make the announcement as to who the winners are, as opposed to having
What
it
a
here?
great question. Well, obviously, we will be at 2 places, so we can certainly, I mean, right now, the wardens do announce, I hope they do anyhow, at their respective precincts, but certainly we can do that at both locations. Because Thad and I, or Jennifer and I, we are planning to divide and conquer. That is, and that is a huge benefit. For example, last week we had some issues, and we had to, all 3 of us were on the road at once, Jennifer and I and Thad, especially with the voter assist terminal. Some people are still nervous about using that. With having the 2 locations, we will have the opportunity to be on site and mitigate those issues. A machine malfunction, something with a poll worker, will be there to address those issues.
Okay. Any other questions for today? I think the board would like to kind of digest this information
Absolutely.
and reach out to some of our residents and constituents and see what the feedback is.
Okay.
And this will be on the agenda for our
Right.
next meeting to take
Wonderful.
further
We
action.
appreciate that, because obviously the goal is to get this out with the town census, which we are currently working on. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And next up, Gary Persichetti and John Shortsleeve.
Do we have anything?
Good evening, members of the board. We're here in front of you to talk basically a little bit about the energy performance contract. As you know, last month, the town meeting, the presentation let everyone know that all ECMs except for 2 are fully complete. The 2 that were left were energy management systems in the solar generation for photovoltaic. On 9 buildings, we are going to be producing 2,465,000 kilowatts. What we're trying to get in front of you is basically there's 2 ways to meter it. There's standard net metering and there's virtual net metering. Standard net metering, energy is generated by the solar is used in the buildings, measured through a bidirectional meter, and then the excess energy is exported to the grid, if there is any in those buildings, and the town is given a monetary credit on the utility bills for the excess kilowatts. Virtual net metering, all of the energy generated from the solar is exported directly to the grid. The town is given monetary credits for amount of kilowatts that's in that's exported to the grid. The monetary credit is assigned to the town's electric accounts through Schedule Zs. Schedule Zs is a document submitted to National Grid which indicates the accounts in which we want the meter credits to be assigned. At the time we started this, which is about 3 years ago, virtually net metering and virtual net metering did not have a big significant difference between the two of them. Since then, with the volatility in the electric and the new rates that are coming out with the higher bills, there's quite a difference, by about half. So if we were to go to virtual net metering, over the 20 years, we'd save roughly $2.8 million from standard net metering. The cost to modify this is roughly $480,000. What you're doing is you're virtually going in you're moving electrical and you're moving some of the stuff on what they call on the other side of the meter than where it exists today. We are entering an agreement with Sincarfa for maintenance of the panels, and we have also talked to them, and they can take care of the cost we need to do this as part of it and take their cost back in some of the SRECs, which would mean there'd be no financial burden to the town again, similar to what was done with the ESCO. And just to let you know, SRECs is the other income. What that is the government, to push solar, had come out with a 10-year that you can use the SRECs on and get extra money for them. For us, 2.4 kilowatts will produce 2,875 SRECs in a year. When we started this again, the chart used had a cost of roughly $160 per SREC. Today, the market is running around $270, $280. You cannot use those figures and lock them in because a lot depends on how you decide to buy those. You can buy them each year, you can buy them in 3-year intervals, you can buy them in a full 10. Whichever way you do it changes the market a bit as to what the pricing would be. I'm going to let John explain the financial. Thank you.
Pass that around if we could. There should be 7 of those. I think that's just the right amount.
Actually, you need 8 for the town manager.
5 plus 2.
How long will the,
5 plus 2, yeah. Okay.
will the company lock in the rate for you?
The Sincarfa will be the broker to broker the SRECs. They're going to put options in front of us so the town can consider whether they want to do a 3 or a 5 or a 10. The town can really do whatever it wants. The market will support. You can, as Gary said, you can do everything on the spot market, with no forward contract, or you can lock it up for some period of time.
So if you lock it up a little longer, you're going to get a little less return.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank
Why
you.
don't
Just
walk us through it, John? So you've got 2 projects, 2 solar projects. The Bolton Farms solar project, that which went online, I guess, not quite a year ago. And you've got the projects that Gary just mentioned on the town buildings. So I've got on the front page here, Project 1 is the Bolton Farms project, and they're related to each other, so you need to understand how they work together. Basically, in order to use the net metering credit, at Bolton Farms, all of the power is exported back to National Grid. They use it however they choose, and Chelmsford bought the net metering credits, dollar-denominated credits. So Chelmsford gets 6 million kWh times the dollar value of the net metering credits times the share. It's a sharing arrangement between Sincarfa and Chelmsford. The key is of the point being made in Project 1 is the first table. You have to have an electric budget as the appetite, as the sink, to use these net metering credits. You can't use net metering credits to buy teachers or anything else. You have to use them to pay your electric bill. So there's a parity between how much the town spends on electricity It totals about $1.2 million in the current fiscal year. It's dropping off over time as the supply rate's dropping to $1.1 million in FY18. The net metering credits coming from Bolton Farms, you can see in the current fiscal year, are just about right, $1.2 million. You got a electric budget of $1,230,000, so there's parity there. You've got enough electric budget to use all of the credits. That's what you want. You can see over time that by FY18, you've still got $1.2 million in credits, but you've only got a budget of $1.1 million. And as a result, the benefit to the town is dropping from $600,000 down to $530,000 because you're generating credits you can't use. So that's the takeaway from, that's the starting point. The other advantage, the second page goes into the solar arrays that are on the 9 facilities around town. And as Gary pointed out, there's 2 ways to do it. The way they've been designed and built is behind the meter. That's the top line of this chart. Here you're not buying credits. I've set this up so that you're avoiding the cost of electricity at each place. As Gary pointed out, it is true that, in July, for example, if you're not in school, you may generate more credits than you can use. And in that case, even in the behind the meter scenario, you're getting credits. But by and large, with the behind the meter scenario, you're avoiding the cost of electricity. So the Harrington array is avoiding electric budget at Harrington. That is $340,000 in FY16, not just Harrington, but all of them together. It drops off over time because your electric budget is dropping off over time. The other way to go is this virtual net metering. You're, again, everything goes back to the grid. You're getting dollars, not electricity, dollar-denominated credits, which you have to use against an electric budget. Now, you don't have enough electric budget. So the next thing that we've been talking about doing, and Paul has initiated some start of the conversations with the Chelmsford Housing Authority and others, is assigning the beauty of a net metering credit. It's fungible and assignable. You've got $1 a credit, you can sell it to somebody for 80 cents. And so that's what the whole plan is, to turn these fungible net metering credits into value for the town. The town share, after we get through that, is presented in the middle of the chart. That's the $350,000 line. And as Gary pointed out, there's also the SRECs, totally separate revenue stream, solar renewable energy credits. And we can use assuming this model that I put together is only one example. There are many different ways of structuring the SRECs. But this is based upon a 5-year purchase of SRECs, with the first 1.5 years prepaid at the time that those arrays go operational. So on day 1, before you've generated any SRECs, you get a check for $500,000, which you can turn around and pay Johnson Controls the capital cost for this project. That's the concept that we're talking about here. There's some O&M cost associated with it, but you can see the net benefit to the town. I mean, there's really an embarrassment of riches here to some extent. You're looking at net benefit to the town of a little over $300,000, even if you use $500,000 to pay the capital cost. There's still another $350,000 of net benefit in year 1. By year 3, it's up to $800,000, and it levels off at that level. Once you get beyond year 5, if you have a 5-year contract, you've still got more SRECs to sell, and you're deciding whether you want to do a 3-year or a 5 or what you want to do. There's a significant upside. I think easily $3 million in the first 5 years, easily north of $7 million over 10 years. So the challenge is, I think the reason we're here, there's 2 challenges. First of all, where to get $487,000 to pay for the change of the design so we can export 100%. And we've got to negotiate these assignments. So our plan is to assign the credits, the net metering credits. It requires a negotiation with Johnson Controls. We want them to accept payment on commercial operation rather than advance of commercial operation. Have them join in some of the pain here, I guess. We're close to, I think, cutting a deal, if this is the way the town wants to go with Sincarfa. They would both be the broker to broker the net metering credits, the SRECs. They would also procure for us an electrical subcontractor to be the operator and maintainer of the arrays. And there's a whole bunch of paperwork with the state, filing reports that they're doing on Bolton Farms they could do for the town as well. And as we say, use the SREC revenue to pay for the capital cost. So, questions?
And there's also a time element involved. Right now, the way the system is built, we've received approval right now from National Grid of the connections on all the arrays that have been constructed, which is basically everything now but the ground-mounted Harrington, in the Harrington School. If we just continue along that path, then those will probably be operational within 30 days or so, roughly. If we choose this path, which, as you can see, results in a significant long-term return to the town, it'll probably take us an extra 60 or so days in order to, get the electrical work performed, get National Grid to redo the permits, and then make it operational. So there is also a short-term time frame. But again, given the magnitude of this as we've been working, over the last few months, it seemed like the ultimate no-brainer, but what we wanted to do was to flush it out and then also come to you and let you know, because we're at that point now. I just got the approvals last week from National Grid saying, okay, your applications for capacity and everything have been approved. And basically they're looking for a payment by the end of November in order to bring the final stage, or we basically alter the course. Take probably about 60 more days to get this work done in the fields and the permits modified, and then basically come in and really achieve a significant long-term savings for the town. So, as you can see with this energy world, it's one that you evaluate, and then you go back and revisit and are always analyzing, because it's you can see it's a very dynamic market, as sort of Gary was suggesting at the very beginning, in terms of what's happening out there, and obviously the benefit that we could receive as a community would be significant.
Any questions?
I have a question. So how does this work with the current ESCO project? I mean, we have estimated SREC value for the first 10 years of our project of $3.8 million. So this is going to be an additional $3 million on top of that?
If you were to stay the way it is now, sign the contracts and send in a payment to National Grid, what you see on the paper is what would happen. Basically, you'd stay behind, in front of the meter instead of behind the meter instead of in front of it, and that would be the savings you'd get. Yes, you're going to get more savings on it, and that's the reason for doing it. Like I said, two things have happened.
So we'll get close to $7 million instead of 3.8.
It could be. The SRECs, of course, as I said, right now, I think are running, as they said, between $270 and $280 versus the $160. So there's a $140 per SREC difference, which, if it was today, that's $345,000 a year. Over the life of that would be $3,400,000.
But we need to invest an additional approximately half a million to get this additional benefit.
Yeah, which if you just use the SRECs without getting back into the other, it's less than 2 years. And you paid back, and now for the other 8 years, you have that savings.
We've already been receiving the benefits from the Bolton side. And it became operational, I think it was last January, and those credits have been coming back through the accounts. And so what we're doing now is we're starting to get ready to become operational, the solar arrays on the buildings, what we're saying is we can modify that to be like the Bolton site, where we're not taking direct power, obviously, from Bolton, but we're basically sending it all back to National Grid and then getting the value in the SRECs, because that's where the value is.
And just to confirm, we can sign into a contract for multiple years to ensure that we receive that savings? Is that?
Yeah, I mean,
Janet, is
it's
that-
like any other risk thing, and George was sort of asking it earlier on. If you do a 3-year contract, there's a risk. If you do a 10-year contract, there's a greater risk. So the problem is your risk premium increases the further out you go. So my sense would be, and again, that's a judgment call, but my sense would be, given what's out there, would be to do a shorter-term agreement, and then, but you can, right? We could do a 10-year agreement. But my sense would be is we're on the market for the Sincarfa one is done on market. In other words, we don't have a discounted contract for a guaranteed revenue from the Sincarfa site in Bolton, the Bolton Orchard site. What happens there is it fluctuates with the market, and the market, as Gary said, is very strong now. It's been strong, and it's forecast to be strong. And so that's how that works. What's suggesting is the alternative means would be to enter into an agreement, but again, when you then assign the risk to somebody else, you then pay a premium for that risk.
Just to give you a sense for the math, as Gary points out, if you buy them on the spot market today, about $280 is what you might get. But those are actually SREC 1. SREC 2 is slightly different. But if you sign a 10-year deal, rather than getting $280, you might get like $160. So it's a pretty big difference between, just going on the spot market and getting what you can year to year, and someone saying, "I'll guarantee this number for you."
And again, we're not presenting ourselves as commodity experts. It's no different than when we procure our own natural gas supply, and in the past our electricity supply. You enter into a contract for a period, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, and then reality happens after that. Now, right now, we're in a great position. Our price is significantly below the standard offer, the market price for electricity. We're benefiting from that. What was it, 3 years ago, that wasn't the case. And again, that's, you just go, but you have to make a judgment call. And so, again, what we're proposing this evening is the big difference. If we do nothing, like I said, we know where the path will go in terms of the arrays on our buildings. It'll go right into the buildings. What we're saying is if we do the investment in modifying those sites to send it all off of the buildings back into the grid, it's reasonable to assume that we're going to have a significant return in the hundreds of thousands of dollars per year over the period of those arrays, which would really be a 20-year period.
I heard the word ESCO, they would get some money. Would that come out of the 487 in capital costs?
What do you mean the ESCO?
No, the money to Johnson Controls is basically for the electrical work that needs to be done. It's not directly to them.
They're gonna sub that
It's their
work out.
subcontractor who's done all the work to date.
Do we know what that's going to cost us?
$480.
Yeah, and the reason we want to do that is if you have the subcontractor do the final work, if there's any issues, we know who to go to.
Right.
The contractor who did the original work, and now the subcontractor is going to come in and do the net metering work, they would be the responsible party. Because the other thing that happens after all this, if it's realized, is once these things become operational, the town then has a maintenance responsibility for those sites. And so that's part of our agreement also with Sincarfa, is they're going to sub out the work to do the.
How much was it again?
What's the number for?
For Sincarfa,
Yeah.
$41,000 per year.
41,000 a year.
Now, that's in addition to,
That's the last line on the bottom of the second.
Of his pay.
What's called O&M
Okay.
costs on
I haven't
page 2.
seen, we haven't unfortunately.
But is that-
compared notes
Yeah,
here.
no.
but Gary, on the ESCO
Yep.
chart, is the 41,000 then in addition to the annual M&V cost?
Are you on year 19 or 20? Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah.
At the end of
It
it?
starts at 18,000, ends at 32,000 a year, so we're looking at 40,000.
The energy
plus
performance
that.
contract did not include maintenance.
No,
That's,
does
I
not.
think that's what she was asking, is if that
No.
contract included maintenance.
It did not.
It does not.
Okay.
Not at all.
So if we were to not move forward on this right away, but to move forward sometime next year, is that a possibility? Or is this a one-time,
You need to make a decision.
and why is that?
Because you've got to register, I mean, I guess what you could do is you could put you could put the projects on hold and just not energize them. I mean, I guess that's an option, but if you're gonna energize them, you probably don't wanna energize them behind the meter and then later turn around and try to energize them the other, an export arrangement. There's paperwork, it's a pretty big deal.
It's about paperwork? It's a lot of paperwork?
No, it's more than that. There are a lot of moving pieces here, moving parts. In order to do the plan that we're talking about, there are at least 5 contracts that have to be executed. There's one with Carpa, there's the assignments of the net metering credit. You're actually gonna have to do the assignments no matter what, net metering credits. We've got the relationship between Chelmsford and Dracut. The Schedule Z needs to be amended. Dracut's on Paul's phone every day saying, can we amend Schedule Z? We're saying, wait a minute, we're not quite sure, you can do this twice a year. We want to be sure that we're doing it the right way. So there are a lot of moving parts.
So it's more about coordination
Yeah.
and less about the actual equipment or,
Well,
right?
it's also a cost factor because right now, we're basically doing this work sort of as a pass-through because it's part of what's going on now already. So there isn't a lot of upcharge that there would be if they were to walk away and have to come back.
Another question? Does this link into the school stuff that you said wasn't hooked up yet?
Yeah, right,
Yes.
right. Those arrays are not hooked up yet. They would, if we do nothing, they'll be hooked up probably within 30 days or so. However, if we go through the change, we're going to have we'll have the inactivity for about 60 days. However, you can see the significant long-term benefit to the community by this investment of sending it all back to the market and getting the SREC credits.
There's one more regulatory issue that also goes to your question. I'd have to confirm this, but I'm pretty sure
You may want to go behind the
They
mic.
can't hear you.
All right.
Right.
When you energize the arrays, the utility asks you a question. Is it a new service or an existing service? It's a very important question, because they're only going to ask it once. If it's existing service, that means behind the meter, and the utility is setting up their equipment, and all of the equipment is synchronized and put together. If you turn around later and go back to National Grid and say, we've changed our mind, now we want to reconfigure things, I'm not sure they're going to let you. I think it's a fork in the road from their perspective.
So if we pass on this, then you'll never come back to us and ask again, right?
I'll never come back and ask for what?
You won't ask
You'll
for
never
this
come
again.
back and
No,
present this
but-
proposal because it sounds like it's a little too complicated.
Well, it's not a
We'll
question.
basically need to do this in order to secure the savings now, right?
If you were asking my opinion as to which to do, I'm here to help, but I would recommend doing what Paul is suggesting here. I think that makes more sense. But either way you want to go, we can go.
Okay.
Is this available because of the gigantic rate increases that?
That's part of it.
Yeah.
That's part of it. The prices were, the net metering credits were worth about 16 cents a year ago. Now they're worth 20, over a 12-month average. So that's part of it. That's why, we thought we had more room. The fact that you're at $1.2 million, electric budget net metering credits is because of that, jump from 16 to 20 cents. But
If that levels off, then we made this additional profit may not be available later on, is that?
No, I think so the net metering credits are, a function of the market. So if we go through another 2008 and, the prices, electric prices drop, again, then the net metering credit will drop too. So that part of the revenue stream goes up and down with the market. The SRECs can go up and down with the market if you choose to do it, on a spot market basis, or you can lock it in and pay the premium to do so.
Any other questions, discussion?
We're going to just add this to the next agenda?
Time is of the essence, and I'm not looking to rush a decision by the board.
Right.
But the as we said, right now, as it stands with National Grid, I've got to pay them by November 28th, for the capacity they've reserved on the existing system, or basically we have to start over again with licensing the current way we're doing it. So I don't mean to put the board in a shotgun situation, but we do need some direction, whether you want to do it at a pre-meeting before your next meeting or something, but we really do need an answer by the end of the month in order to decide which way to go with this
Well,
situation.
I mean, this is the first time that we're seeing a
Right.
lot of this information,
Exactly.
and I wish we had had it even
Right.
with our packets.
Right.
That would have definitely helped. I do see the benefit, but, personally, I would like to wait at least till next Monday. We could
Okay.
do it before town meeting if everybody would feel comfortable by then. Is that going to be enough time?
I mean, honestly, I'd like to see an update on the current contract to see if we're actually generating the savings,
Which, the ESCO contract or the Bolton Farms?
the ESCO contract.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar as I should be.
I'm looking at Gary.
You're not going to see any savings right now because none of them are turned on. You have no arrays working at this point in time. So
Okay.
the savings
So it was only
the
the
savings
arrays
for
that were
solar.
going to generate, only the arrays were going to generate these savings that are on this chart?
No, the savings over and above that. The savings I gave it, I believe at town meeting was somewhere around 164,000 to date. And that's basically during the last 12-month period during construction. And that would be on any of the ECMs that were complete, as well as some of them that were partially complete and had a month or two worth of savings. And then the rest of it will come when the solar is on.
But the performance contract period won't commence until the solar arrays are turned on. And so we can't give you that report because they haven't commenced the period. What we have are these interim savings until the period becomes effective.
But we're still paying the 22 million in debt.
18.
Well, it's actually 22 million
Well,
with the interest
with interest,
payment
yes.
over
Right,
the
right, that we're
20
paying
years.
on the
And
18
to be
million in
honest with you, I
principal.
really need to take a look at this, because, I mean, we're paying 22 million. I'm not sure I'm willing to pay another $500,000 when I haven't really seen a benefit.
You've seen benefits
Well,
in...
Paul, don't,
Wait a minute, what we're
you haven't turned,
explaining...
listen, let me tell you, this is the first time, just at the tri-board meeting,
Mm-hmm.
that I heard that these solar arrays weren't even turned on.
He gave a report at fall town meeting that said the
Okay.
solar arrays weren't turned on.
But we shorted the schools $750 in their budget because we projected that they would have certain savings. And they're not having these savings, and now we have to give them $240,000 because they don't have these savings, because we haven't turned these solar arrays on. I'm not feeling real comfortable that we've spent this amount of money, we haven't turned the arrays on, they're not generating the savings, they've got a shortfall in their budget now, and now you're asking for another $500,000. I understand the potential benefit, but at this point, this town's counting pennies, and that's what our whole
Well,
meeting's
I
about
guess
tonight.
to me, it seems like we're mixing a lot of different things all
Exactly.
together, and
I don't think so.
I don't know.
I mean, I wasn't a proponent of the ESCO contract, we all know that, but, you know,
But the
I
issue...
need, I want to see some proof before I'm willing to put more money.
Well, the issue is there's a lot of proof out there. I mean, look at the street lights, look at the lights in all the parking lots of every school and every town building now. You can look at the new univents in all the schools. You can look at the 2 rooftop units at the high school. I mean, these are all stuff that's changed, the way things are looking in the schools, and also with
And it
with
looks
the output,
very nice. I'm
with
not
the
saying
output
it
of it,
doesn't
and
look
all of
nice.
those are taking a savings as we speak. As far as the solar goes, I mean, it's at the point right now, as we said, where we have a potential to make a lot more money for the town going forward by doing this. As I said, you're talking basically about a year and 8 months at tops to pay the $500,000 or $480,000.
Gary, really quickly to the point, I
Sure.
tried to touch on that before. I know we don't want to probably lock into a 10-year rate because then it would drop the value much lower. Could we lock into a 2 or 3 year rate and guarantee that we would save more than the investment we're putting in to making this transition? if we weren't gonna go 10 years, if we're gonna lock into, say, a 3-year rate?
Like the 480
Yes.
you're talking about?
Yes,
So we could guarantee that we would make an additional more than 480,000?
yes.
I think a 3-year deal would definitely generate the revenue needed for certainly get the money back. I think you can get the money back in a year and a half through SREC
Like-
revenue stream.
Right. So Matt, what I had said, just to give you a little information on that, is simply, if you took the 280 of today versus the 160 of the estimate when this was put together, if you took that 140 and you multiply the 2,875 SRECs that RRAs produce, you're talking 345,000. So that would be 345 in year one of your 480. So if you're locked in 1 year, you'd get 345 at today's market.
And how that would effectively work in terms of budgetary situation, let's say these things become operational in February and so forth, you have a portion of the remainder of this fiscal year, one whole fiscal year of fiscal 16, and then just a couple months of 17 run out. So again, your major impact is really on that one fiscal year of the savings. But and I think the point is made, Pat, you're correct. What we're doing is we're confusing items.
I'm not confused. Well, let Paul finish.
The easy thing would have been to do nothing. To just come in, turn the power on, let the things run, and quite frankly, under that chart and savings under the performance contract, 2/3 of the savings come from the solar arrays. They come from the power going back into the schools and the SRECs from the limited power that would go off back into the grid. What we've done is, with the Energy Committee, our energy manager, and our consultant, as we were coming online this fall, as we said, market conditions had changed, and we looked at it and basically said, hey, wait a minute. Before we just go in and keep our heads low and just plug the thing in, we ought to step back, and we discussed with Johnson Controls, who was our vendor, saying, hey, wait a minute. There might be a advantageous situation for the town in the long run, significantly, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars per year, if we basically take advantage of the current conditions and send it all back into the grid. And therefore, that's what we've done. And again, the reason we haven't been here sooner is because we have been doing this work over the last several weeks. And we've asked the same questions, Matt. Hey, why don't we do this over 3 years instead of 10 or 5 to guarantee that savings up front? So that's what we've been doing at. The problem is while we're doing our work, National Grid is doing their work, and Johnson is finishing their work, and now we're at a point of convergence. But we didn't want to come to you without having a developed proposal. And so that's why we're here this evening, is we've got two things coming on. If we do nothing, and we leave here tonight, or in the next month, whatever, or actually by the end of the month, then we simply make the payment to National Grid. The meters go up operational, as we said, they're complete, and that's what we would achieve. However, why we sort of came back and have worked over these last few months is saying, hey, wait a minute, we're talking a significant opportunity for the town in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And quite frankly, I felt if I didn't do that, then I would be irresponsible. You know, the not coming to you and then basically coming saying, hey, look, we have an opportunity that can gain the town hundreds of thousands of dollars per year for the 20-year life of those solar arrays. So that's why we're here. I apologize that the timeframes aren't greater, but it's not because of lack of effort. We've been on these calls, twice a week for the last several weeks, trying to pull all this information together, getting cost estimates from Johnson Controls and their subs of what's it going to cost to do the modifications, because we want to hold one electrical party responsible. What's it going to take to do a maintenance agreement? What's it going to cost to do the metering work? And all this took time and effort, and quite frankly, expense, to do that. And so that's what brings us here this evening. And as you said, I've been kind of telegraphing it for the last few weeks, saying, hey, look, we're working on something, we're going to come back, and we think that this makes in the long-term interest of the town. Unfortunately, going back to the performance contract, like I said, the performance period will not start until the solar arrays become operational. So we can't give you data results, but what we can tell you, as based on the performance contract, is 2/3 of that savings comes from the solar arrays in terms of SRECs and the energy costs. And so that's why when the initial projections were year to date, what's the electricity cost this year versus last year in the school department, you're not going to see that magnitude because, again, 2/3 of your savings activity hasn't been turned on yet. but it will be for the last 6 months or so of the fiscal year when that takes place. So that's where we're at. And I apologize, but we've been working as hard as we can because we felt this was worthwhile to do the work in. And one thing I always tell my people, Gary and others who work with this, is you know what, go back, revisit. Don't be concerned with revisiting something that's been done earlier, because you always want to look at what the market and what the opportunities are for the community. And quite frankly, this one is one that doesn't come along often, where you've got a realistic multi-$100,000 savings that we can benefit from as a community for again, years.
Yeah, I was just about done. If I could just finish up. And can you just confirm that if we use a prepaid SREX, the town won't have to front any of this money up front? The contractor will just take it out of the first year and a half SREX cost. Is that accurate? That the town won't have to actually take out of
That's
capital
the
or free
plan we're
cash somewhere?
proposing. That's our plan. It requires that we negotiate with Johnson Controls the timing of that payment. We haven't done that yet.
The other option, Matt, would have been to come back to town meeting and say, we want $500,000 to modify our plan, not do that. But again, recognizing the financial situations of the town, we devised this plan to basically take the revenue from the SREC credit.
Yeah,
And
I'd
that
prefer to
took
do
time.
that.
And then also, as Pat knows, we've been having discussions with the housing authority saying, hey, look, we need to shed some capacity. Would you be interested? And we had to explain that to David, and we did all that work as well. So it's been a considerable effort to get us to where we are today. And as you can see, this is heavy stuff. I don't doubt that, and I know that. But again,
I just had one
big
final
project.
question, if I could. If we're going to delay the implementation of this for an additional, say, 2 months or so we can realize these additional savings, that will, of course, have an effect on the school department budget. Will we be able to use, some of these savings or essentially just
yes,
give them more money?
That's what we'd have to do. But I caution you, and I don't mean this as a pushing threat. Every day that goes by is a day that doesn't work. For example, the first thing we have to do to Johnson Controls is we'll go do the engineering work, and that's going to take 30 days. And then we go from there. So you're right, Matt. Every day that it's not operational is a day we're going to forego. No matter if we do nothing and we forego, we've just wasted time. If we delay and make the decision, then we're once again we're passing time before we make this. If we do go to the conversion to making it operational, every day is money. We realize that, but that's not to say we're trying to force a decision, but we're trying to present you the realities of what's before us.
All right, I know you've been dying.
I just want to make sure that the total costs of this are revealed, and is the only cost that's here is $487? Is that the only cost we incur, or is there more? I mean, I understand there's going to be, O&M cost every month.
Right. Remember, no matter what we do, we're going to have to maintain those solar arrays
So that's
and the
gonna be
metering work.
$480.
That exists regardless of what we do. But in order to do this conversion, the only cost is the $487. And in fact, as Gary noted, that's a discounted price because we're keeping the electrical subcontractor on site. If that contractor leaves and remobilizes, then you're right. There's no guarantee, and it's likelihood that 487 number would go up because you're bringing the electrical subcontractor back. And also, we've done this with Johnson Controls to take no overhead and markup on this work as well. So that is those are the discussions we've been having, like I said, over the last several weeks.
Okay.
And further answer that, we've been in contact with National Grid. There's a $1,000 fee per building, and that is built into that as well. That number is carried.
So, I mean, I know that we just are essentially seeing this tonight, but I mean, you guys have been working on this for weeks now. I mean, I actually don't want to delay if we don't have to, even if it's just a week. It's essentially another week we have to delay. I feel comfortable voting on
I
it.
think they could have at least had this material put into our packet. I mean,
I agree.
I don't disagree with timing, but actually, the contract we were still working on.
Yeah.
So we didn't even have it totally available. to be
So now,
honest.
is there still some negotiation with Johnson Controls for what will be done?
Yes.
I mean, can that be done in the next week or so? And then
Yes.
could,
Yes.
I mean, I'm okay with having a vote before town meeting.
Pre-town meeting.
And then if, whoever has any questions based on this, because I know I'll come up with some, can do, ask those individually to Gary or Paul, or pass them on to John. So, anything else right now?
Now, I just have a question of Gary. Do we have an energy person, energy manager?
Yeah.
Is he here?
No, she isn't. No.
Oh, she
Tonight?
isn't.
No,
Okay.
she's not here tonight, no.
Oh, okay. I was just curious. I
Mhm.
know we approved it.
We
but
received the grant
Yep.
for that person,
Yeah,
and
but
this
I
is the
didn't-
type of stuff
Mhm.
we've been doing with her, as well as some other programs.
No, okay.
She's been in all the conversations with both of the groups and working with me closely on this.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So my question is, are we going to consider this, when we bring it back, are we consider it as a 3-year deal?
I think that's part of what they'll bring forward, is to make a recommendation
Yeah,
on whether it should be.
that's my recommendation, is to do it as a
Minimum.
3-year deal, because the longer you go out, the higher discount rate you're gonna take to
Right.
uncertainty.
Right.
And so that's my recommendation would be to do it under a 3-year
Okay,
route.
that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, next up, Howes and Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan?
Good evening, my name is, Dick Sullivan. I'm the engagement partner to the town for the FY 2014 audit. Tonight with me is Katie Sinisi. She's the supervisor on the job, and the other person that was part of here but couldn't be here because he's actually doing this someplace else is the manager, which was Dennis Cohane. What I wanted to do is just basically walk you through how the audit went for FY 14. Give you a little idea of how we go about doing our work, talk a little bit about what I saw in terms of financial performance for the town, and then walk through the various 3 reports to give you an idea of what it is that was in front of you if you had a chance to look at it. The first thing we kind of do when we come in and do an audit is we do what's called risk assessment. And what that means is we're looking at internal controls. We're trying to find out what it is that, from a design standpoint as well as a procedure standpoint, that makes the financial reporting system sound. That includes internal reporting, the budget process, reconciliations. We look at revenue cycles, we look at expenditure cycles, we look at payroll cycles, we look at cutoff. And all those things come together from an assessment standpoint, at least an initial assessment standpoint, for us to determine the type of testing we're going to do. And then we begin the process of testing, which is taking all those elements from a transactional standpoint and looking at, say, 30 revenue transactions, 30 payroll transactions, 30 expenditure transactions, and determining if they've been properly authorized, properly approved, properly paid, and properly posted and recorded in the general ledger. Now, that is what I would call, from a design standpoint, transactional / looking at internal controls. The other thing that we do is we do what's called substantive testing. And what that really means is we look at your balance sheet and your cash and investments, your capital items, your receivables, and we ascertain as whether or not they're accurately reported. The same thing with your liabilities. You have a significant OPEB liability. You have, I think, $117 million worth of bonds, give or take. You've got warrants payable cutoff that we have to look at, and you've got like your sick and vacation accrual, which is called compensated absences. We take a look at that. And what we try to do from the whole process is constantly evaluate the risk associated with some of these elements, i.e. cash, high-risk element, because it's liquid, it can walk. Not so worried about capital assets as much because they tend to be, their articles usually result in their establishment, and they tend not to move too fast if you're, anywhere you're going. So we kind of look at things like that. And through the process, at the end of the day, we try to come up with an opinion. And one that either says this is the amounts stated in this financial statement are accurate, or maybe they're not. Now, the process we go by is in 2 phases. In May, we come in and we look at things that we call non-balance sheet related, meaning that it doesn't have to be as of June 30th. Your budget's been around for over a year because you approved it in April or May the previous year. Long-term debt is something that we can usually audit because there's not a lot of debt activity in the last part of a fiscal year. The single audit, which is that piece that is required because the town expends more than $500,000 worth of federal funds, we try to get that done during that time frame. And we do that transactional testing I was referring to before. Then we come in at year end. At year end, this time, when after the books are closed, we were here on September 8th, which is actually a pretty timely close from my standpoint in terms of the way we look at our other clients. And that's when we walk down the balance sheet. Now, at the end of last year, you had $55 million in cash. We audit that to the penny, because that's one of the areas of risk that we like to make sure we mitigate. You have 3 big receivables out there. You have some special assessments. You have an MSBA project that you receive money from. And Chapter 90 was pretty sizable for the town this year with a $2.8 million receivable out there. And then from the capital asset standpoint, you have $222 million, of which I think about $22 or $23 million was added in this fiscal year, like the fire station, the energy project these folks were just talking about, and a couple of other items. And we look at those, and we test those not just to determine if the amounts are correct, but we also do 30 procurement processing to make sure that the process and the actual acquisition of those assets were in compliance with Mass General Law. And finally, this is your bonds payable, which I was close. It's $119 million at the year end. And we look at what was added to it, which was about $25 million, what was paid from it, and if there are any unusual transactions during the year. Now, you did have one interesting transaction where you had a refunding. What a refunding is kind of like a refinancing of your debt on your house. You issued $8.9 million to pay off $9.3 million, and you're going to save about $600,000 over the next 6 to 7 years as a result of that. And that's just a difference in the interest rates. But the fact that I wanted to point it out for you is that that's a significant sum of money, and somebody's paying attention as to what's going on from a debt service standpoint. So, the highlights of the year. Essentially what you came in and we pay attention to, that financial statement has 3 different bases of accounting in it. There's a full accrual accounting, which is in the front, the modified accrual accounting, which is in the back or in the middle, which is actually what S&P takes a look at when they look at unreserved fund balance, assigned fund balance, committed fund balance, and then there's your budgetary statement, which is in the back of the report. You did better than you expected in FY14. You came in about $1.23 million higher than you expected in terms of your performance. Your revenues were higher by a little over $1 million, and expenditures came in almost exactly as they were with a $232,000 surplus. So the good thing is, from a standpoint, when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking you're structurally sound. The budgeting process works. It's always good, and DOR will support this every single time, that if you actually plan to use free cash, your objective is to replenish it. The fact that you had a budgetary surplus in FY14 means that any free cash you would consider using to balance the budget did not have to be used, which is excellent. Unassigned fund balance, which is kind of like your unreserved fund balance, was $12.4 million at the end of the year, which is 10% of your expenditures. There's certain baselines that the GFOA, the Governmental Financial Office Association, recommends for healthy clients. 10% is the level where you get into the upper 1% of people who are doing a good job in terms of reserves. Now, in that $12.4 million is $8.7 million of your STAB fund, but that's still considered a reserve, and it can be used for anything, and that's why it's called unassigned. I happen to note that back in January, you received an upgrade in your S&P rating. One of the things they highlighted was the trends towards liquidity, the trends toward better reserves. I'm just suggesting with you, as an accountant, I love to see reserves. There are some people out there, and sometimes on your side of the desk, that think you should spend every dime you have. I'm an accountant, I'm conservative. What this means is you've got financial flexibility, and that plus A rating probably saved you a couple of basis points on the $25 million you issued this year for debt. Fixed assets, about $23 million was spent. 4 big things came out of this. The fire station, $5 million. You put in some synthetic turf fields for $2 million. The energy management project, that was the biggest one, about $12.7 million. And you did something for the clubhouse at the golf course, $367,000. I mentioned the new debt, which was used mostly to finance those acquisitions. Plus, I also mentioned the fact that you had the refunding, which, again, I have down here saved $563,000 over the next 8 years, which is pretty good. So there's a lot of work that goes into that financial report, but to leave you with the idea of what the financial statements are telling you is, first of all, it's an unmodified opinion, which means it's the best opinion you can get from the work that I do. We had a very good rapport in working with John and Darlene in terms of getting things done. We were once your auditors, now we're back. So there's a lot of extra work that has to be done. in terms of that first year, and I think overall it went pretty well. And one of the things that we always do, like, they know what it's like to be audited. You know, when you have that much cash on the balance sheet, you know that we're gonna be paying a lot of attention to cash. When you have warrants payable, you know we're gonna be paying attention to that. Well, one of the things we come in every year is we always have our little agenda where we ask questions that probably weren't asked in the previous year. And we evaluate the responses to those, let's call it unique questions, the curveballs. And I was very happy, and from a credibility standpoint, it allowed me as your auditor to move on to other things because their responses were timely, they were accurate, and the fact that they didn't have to stumble around looking in files and trying to figure out where that information was going to come from, I was able to get it very quickly, gave me the confidence that this was happening on a day-to-day basis. So that's kind of like how the audit went from that standpoint. If I could, I'd like to just talk a little bit about the federal awards report. The town spent $1.9 million in federal expenditures. We tested special education, which was a little over $1.2 million. In the testing, we had no findings that related to cost, but we did have 3 findings related to what we call compliance. Now, just from a perspective, you have to understand the federal awards report. When we audit the financial statements, we have materiality. We can make audit judgments. The federal awards report really doesn't allow us to do that because the feds basically say, you have to audit this, you have to audit this way, and come up with the results whether it's there or it's not. In this case, we had 3 findings. One was related to the late filing of a financial report as it related to special education. Also in special education, there's a requirement that semi-annually, anybody who works there must do a certification of the time and hours that they've spent. And we did not see the appropriate documentation that indicated that was being done on a consistent basis. And thirdly, and this is actually a management letter comment from not only this year, but from prior years too, hourly employees were not maintaining adequate work records. We could not ascertain the number of hours that people were charging to the engagement with the supporting document that was there. Now, these are all compliance matters. Didn't result in any what we call question costs, but matters that are worthy of being paying attention to for future audits. And 2 of these, I believe, also were part of your prior fiscal year audit too. The last thing we issue is the management letter. Now, the way we usually approach this, if we were your prior year auditors, we would look at the prior recommendations to determine if they've been fixed. So we took the same approach because, I mean, we know Melanson and they're a good company. They had some findings in the prior year that we thought were relevant and wanted to take a look at in the current year. 3 of them related to the first, well, there were 3. One was related to student activity reconciliations. The other one was related to payroll processing. In addition to some of the unsupported work records, we know their employee hours were not adequately approved. We knew that some people were being overpaid. We knew that some people were being overpaid, so we took a look at that. And then there was accounting for encumbrances. And encumbrances are basically a commitment to spend in a subsequent fiscal year amounts that were budgeted in the current year. And what that comment was is that there should be a reconciliation of encumbrances between the school and the general ledger of the town. Unfortunately, all 3 of these comments were not resolved in fiscal 14. They all still existed, and some of them to a larger magnitude, which I'll talk about a little later. But to give you an example, like on the encumbrance piece, the initial encumbrance submitted by the school was a little over $400,000. All they had was about $100,000 left. And that's because the reconciliation process was not taking place. And that's a key element. If you ask me what's the most important internal control you can have, reconciliations. Cash, receivables, payables, encumbrances, you name it. As long as there's a cross-check going on between the detail and the let's call it the general ledger, you know that the controls are in place. And in some of these cases, we didn't see them. From a current year standpoint, this is the one where this was tough. It's a little blemish. We had to highlight what we call a material weakness in the reporting of the management letter, and it related to the budgetary control of the school. I know that this thing has been adequately discussed pretty much through all branches of this town, the tri-board, school committee, finance committee, and this board. I think the comment speaks for itself. I think we have an idea of how it happened. I think there's a really strong idea of how it's going to be fixed. And I think there's also some real strong processes to prevent it from happening again. I am more than willing to talk about this in any detail you wanted to, but I think the fact that I'm here before you weeks after this thing began to process, the whole process started, that belaboring it would not be beneficial to you right now. But I am more than willing to stand by the comments behind it and the conclusions I came as a result of what we saw. The other comment related to accounting for encumbrances, and we just asked Darlene to do a little different way of handling encumbrances as it relates to the general ledger of the town. This is not what I would call a reconciliation issue, it was more of a how things are done issue, and we made a recommendation for improvement. And the final thing related to some outstanding checks. When we audit cash, we tend to look at outstanding checks and look for things that are greater than 3 months old. And if they're greater than 3 months old, we like to see them reconciled, or I should say resolved. And we made a recommendation to John that if you could take a better look at that, that would be helpful too. So to wrap this all up with a few hundred hours worth of work, the audit itself went very well for us, both from a business perspective and actually from the way the financial statements flowed. The issue, as we know, related to some prior year bills that should have been recognized and paid in FY14. Those bills have been reflected in these financial statements. And they also resulted in the current year comment or the material weakness that I highlighted in the management letter. And that also, because of the way the federal awards report works, has to be highlighted in the first report of that document called Compliance with Laws and Regulations. But overall, I mean, except for this one, I don't know if I want to call it a hiccup, this one issue, the engagement went well this year, and the people we work with were very cooperative.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Sullivan? I know you did have, as you said, a couple comments, and I know that Darlene and John did respond to those. Would you like to tell us what how you're going to respond to those? And then we can ask the same for the schools if they wish to come up and make any comments on their issues that were raised.
The comment that I had in the management letter was regarding encumbrances. The way that when I close my books, it's all automated. I push my button and it closes my year. What it was doing was taking the encumbrances and actually reflecting it as a current year expenditure. So I went, this didn't happen to me last year, so I thought, what the heck? So I went back and looked at my setup. I had an upgrade in my Munis system, and when they upgraded my Munis system, it was something that was an error in the setup in the system. So I spoke with Munis and said, I think, there was a setup issue, and they looked at it, and they came back and they said, yes, we're sorry, when we put in your new version of the software, there was a little bug in that system. So when I closed it to expenditure. I just ended up doing a reversal and taking that expenditure out of that fiscal year and moving it into, into the next year. But that really was a system problem that I didn't know about until I hit that button to close out my books. So, so that has been fixed, already been resolved from my management piece.
Okay, and then the issue about the checks.
The checks is going to be John's piece.
I can speak to that. As you probably can guess, the town of Chelmsford issues thousands of vendor checks every year. And so there's a process. What happens is we have a separate checking account. And what happens is all of the checks, as I wrote in the memo, have to bear the statement under Mass General Law, void if not cashed within 1 year from date of issue. Now, most people cash their vendor checks right away because they're either a business being reimbursed for a service they provided, or maybe a town employee that's receiving an expense reimbursement. Most people cash them right away or deposit them. There are individuals that, for one reason or another, either they get put in a bureau drawer or on a dining room table and they get forgotten about. So when we issue a check, for example, we have to let that person, the holder of it, they have up to a year legally to cash it. So what we've done always done in the past is we tend to move older, stale dated checks, if you will, out of the checking account, and we transfer them to a special account called vendor tailings. The name comes from, it's kind of the leftovers of the vendor account. And then there's a whole procedure that we have to go through. We have to send the person a first-class letter notifying that they have an uncashed check. If they don't respond to that, if it's over a certain dollar amount, we then place an ad in the newspaper and put it on the town website. And then they have up to a year after that to claim it. If in that time they do not claim it, then it goes back into the town's general fund as a receipt, because it's money that wasn't expended, it comes back in. What we used to do in the past is we tend to move them in batches. So for example, all of the 2013 checks that we issued, there may be at any one time 50 or 60 at this point that are still floating out that have never been deposited. We would move them in once per year. And so right now, if any checks were still issued in December 2013, you can see that I can't move them yet because the individuals that receive these checks have up to a year. What we will do, we'll take Powers and Sullivan's suggestion and move them in smaller batches so we can do 6 months at a time. So in effect, we'll be cleaning stale dated checks out of the town's checking account on a more frequent basis. So it's a good suggestion.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I just had a question for Darlene. When you were talking about accounting for expenditures and encumbrances, were you talking about the school money specifically, or was it?
No, this was just my encumbrances for the town side.
For the town, too? Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? So would anybody from the school administration or committee want to make any comments? I know this isn't a posted meeting for you, so. Right.
Hi, folks. Frank Tiano, Superintendent of Schools. Just want to say we appreciated the work that Mr. Sullivan had done from his firm, as well as folks from the town side as well. When you receive findings such as this, you have to reevaluate your entire system. And what we're doing is we've put the people in place and we've put the supports in place for us to be able to do that. As Mr. Sullivan had mentioned, some strong suggestions in terms of going forward for our business department. We have a consultant in place who's working day to day with us in terms of some of those internal controls, as well as moving our business department forward. As you folks know, you've put in place a forensic auditor for us, working on phase 2 of that audit in terms of looking at the managerial pieces of and the transactional pieces that flow through our business office. We'll be bringing in someone from MASBO in a few months in terms of to really look at what we've put in place, come back on another set of independent eyes to reevaluate the systems that we have. Currently, we are reconciling monthly with the town, and we are meeting with our principals later on this week in terms of the reconciliation of the activity accounts and make sure that those are done properly and putting measures in place to see that they're done on a monthly basis. As well as putting in the internal controls, we'll also be looking at external controls as well in terms of working with the public going forward. So again, we appreciated the opportunity to work with Mr. Sullivan and the rest of the town folks.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right, I think it's generally a positive audit, and appreciate the work that you do. I think this year you definitely earned your fee that we pay to your company, and we look forward to having some positive results that come from this. So if nobody else has anything else, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to town manager reports.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just 2 reports this evening to address with the board. The first one is, and I know that the Chair and Selectman Hanson are familiar with this, the Northern Middlesex Council of Government has issued a request for proposals for the District Local Technical Assistance Round 8. And those proposals are due at the 24th of this month. And, we included them in your packet. I don't know if the board members have any suggestions or if any come up. And speaking to Evan Belansky, he's exploring the possibility of whether we could utilize some of these grant fundings to help facilitate some of the implementation of the Center Master Plan, as well as the recently completed North Master Plan. In terms of both of those plans have to do with the facade program, which is the exterior appearance of the buildings in those two downtown or in North Center areas. And so we're exploring that with NIMCOG to see if that may be possible. One of the other areas we looked at was seeing whether some of these things could go towards economic development efforts with the Middlesex 3 Coalition. And in speaking to Beverly Woods and Jay Donovan on those matters, they seem to think that they have Mass DOT monies that could probably assist those efforts. So again, it's informational. As I mentioned, I know that you and Matt are familiar with this process, but we just wanted to bring you the full board up to speed that there is opportunity. A lot of the program aspects we have utilized in the past in terms of updating master plans and so forth.
So you do intend to submit for these?
If it's possible. Again, we're in discussions, by email and such with NIMCOG to see if that would be a properly and allowable for, because obviously the missions of the program are to create jobs and economic development, and we're arguing or presenting the case that we believe that a facade program would help preserve and grow jobs. So those are the type of activities that we're looking for. We've done other initiatives, as you know, with Stormwater Collaborative, with sealers of weights and measures and so forth. Some of those will be continuing, but we sort of tried to think of, what else there might be for the community.
Yeah. One quick question. Has there been any thought regarding the planning ahead for housing? Speaking with Evan, anything regarding like Mill Road, or even looking at the fire station, or as far as like planning and looking at some other pieces of property in town?
Well, George can speak to that. I know that his committee is looking to update the master plan.
We didn't have a quorum last time, so they'll probably do it at the next meeting. They'll update there'll be about 20 potential sites.
Okay. Yeah.
Probably won't be a big change from what's already existing, maybe a couple new ones. A couple pieces of town-owned, two contiguous pieces of town-owned land that may be able to be built. Depends. Somebody's got to take a hard look at it. I think it's a tough piece to develop, but I mean, it's certainly not enough room. So.
Yeah, I was just thinking if we can tap into some of these funding sources, that would be good. And just
I think with the big thing is the change of administration, and I'm not saying good or bad. It's just a question to see how everything fits in. And I think that was David Edison's biggest concern with some of the money he was trying to get. Some of the space we may have, and if we had it, where would we get the funds to do construction? And he did have some in place 6 months ago, but it kind of disappeared, and now nothing was going to happen until after the new administration takes office, and he kind of feels his way around, because he's very good at raising a lot of money.
Yeah.
He's been very, very successful at it. So
that's true. And just to that point, and Pat, I'm sure you could speak to it. I just want to say quickly regarding the DLTA or any of the other funding that comes through NIMCOG and the regionalization projects. I think Chelmsford is probably one of the most aggressive communities at going after that funding and using it to fund these different projects and efforts that we've used in the community. Because Pat and I have been there every month for the past few years, and we're always one of the first communities to put in for our projects, and it's rewarded us in the tens of thousands of dollars a year.
Because I know when I do look at other communities, it's amazing what they don't do, what they don't have. They're not even started. I mean, they're so far behind, it's ridiculous. So. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And then the second item on our agenda is to provide you with the quarterly status report on the Chelmsford Center for the Arts and the Chelmsford Community Center. This was one of the included in the goals for the year. So what we have is documentation from the town accountant regarding the two facilities, and as the documents reveal, and we've given you the source documents, is that the total revenues for the CCA through the first quarter of the year through September were $22,960 in revenue, and expenses were $9,700, which left a balance of $13,400. Obviously, we know with experience at that facilities, their costs tend to increase in the winter with the heating months, because they do have electric heat over there, as we recall, and But again, the good news is they're definitely in the black and really poised to go into the second quarter. And then the second one is for the Chelmsford Community Center. Their quarterly revenues were $35,667. and their expenses were $29.59, and what's left them with a $600 surplus for the current year, but their overall fund balance is over $27,000. So they're certainly well-positioned as well. So I just wanted to bring the board up to date with those two funds as per the board's goals.
Okay.
Now, Paul,
Yeah.
do they suffer from the CCC? Do they suffer from the same electric heating problems at the CCA?
No, it's a different building. It's used differently, and so we have not experienced that swing of magnitude. So no, the short answer is no.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to recommendations for the special town meeting and the leftover articles from the fall annual town meeting. So I guess we'll start with the special town meeting.
I mean, if you'd like, Madam Chair, I can go through the presentation that I presented at the Finance Committee last Thursday evening, and I can give you the handouts. It's the same one, Bob, but this time I saved some toner and printed it in grayscale.
Okay, good.
So you can have that, and I'll leave one for Vivian to follow along. The again, town meeting gathers a week from tonight. The first one has to do with unpaid school bills, and as per the report, we're per the advice of town council, we're going to break this into three motions. The first one is to make payment to the collaboratives in the amount of $102,193.41. The second component is for the payment of bills in which there was a sufficient appropriation at the time those services were incurred, and that was $15,412.64. And then the third motion would be for the payment of bills in which they occurred at the period of the fiscal year in which there appears to be an insufficient appropriation, and that amount would be $23,743.90. That last amount does require a 9/10 vote. So that's sort of the request under Article 1. And again, we've worked with the accountant and town council to assemble these motions, and at last Thursday night's Finance Committee meeting, the Finance Committee unanimously recommend approval of these motions in this article.
What is the last column where it says no or yes?
Whether you're a PO.
Oh.
If you see on the end, it was the first column was date of invoice, second was date of service delivery, middle column was vendor, next column was dollar amount, the quantum vote, in this case being a 9/10, and then the last one being was there a PO issued. And obviously that has a determination because a PO in essence is recognized as an encumbrance.
Sure. Any question, discussion about these bills?
This is one vote, right?
Sorry, what's that?
It's three pieces, but
It's three pieces. It'll be three motions and three votes under the article.
And they
Per
each
the direction of
require
town
90
council.
90,
No, majority for the first two, because for an educational collaborative, which is a governmental unit, that only requires a majority vote for unpaid bills. And then also for bills and services that were incurred when there was sufficient appropriation, council's opinion is that also is a majority vote. It's only when there is insufficient appropriation that it requires a 9/10 vote.
So this would only be on the 23,000?
Yes. And again, it was noted at the Finance Committee level, there appears that these services were appropriately provided and so forth, and in essence, the services were delivered to the school system, and to not pay it, in essence, would be penalizing the vendors for nothing that they did under their control.
And perhaps penalizing the students that
Students
are
going forward,
receiving
yeah.
these services.
Students,
Going
the
forward,
department, the whole, it's
Right.
ridiculous to think that they're gonna do.
One of the questions that were asked the other night at FinCom was the Kelly services for $22,251. Did that represent a month, or did it represent 2 months or 3 months?
That was April's bills.
That was April's bill? Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of special town meeting Article 1.
Seconded?
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
The second article pertains to the acquisition of 101 Mill Road. I did assemble a PowerPoint photos and so forth for that, and I'll just quickly walk. I know you're familiar with it, but as we did at the Finance Committee on Thursday night, the people maybe who are watching either in the room or at home that may not be familiar with the property, so I'll just take a moment with your indulgence. The acquisition is at 101 Mill Road, and if you drive past there, you see the sign for Merrimack Education Center. The structure on the building is a residence that we believe dates back to 1816. It's a residential home that has been converted to office use. It was housed as the administrative offices for the Merrimack Education Center, which is a nonprofit educational collaborative. The building itself consists of 9 rooms, 2 full baths, 1 3/4 bath, and 1 half bath. And that's a rear photo from the site. And then that's the view of the building as you are coming down Mill Road. As noted in the slide, the assessment by the Board of Assessors, even though they don't pay any taxes, the assessed value in the assessor's records is $542,800. There's a photo of the land. It's 1.77 acres at that structure, and you can see the little building it sits on. That view there looks back towards the soccer fields to be on to your left, and then the conservation land to the back. Again, it's another photo of the grounds that show that it's adjacent to the Murphy soccer field into the Russell Mill conservation land. And then another feature of this property is it's adjacent to the mill stream, and you can see it just, it basically sits over the mill stream at that property. So that's sort of just a nutshell of visually the site, and hopefully we've given people a better understanding of where it's at. The Finance Committee, and the chair is here this evening, the Finance Committee deferred any vote on this article until the night of town meeting. Their concern was what's the proposed use of the property, and Bob was at the meeting, and Bob basically said that would be something that the Board of Selectmen would come up with prior to the town meeting.
Is that true?
Suggestions? Yeah.
Do you have any?
Yeah, I have some, but,
You're going to share them with us?
oh, do you want to do it now?
Well, I think we need to know, I think I would like to know what possible uses there might be. And I
Okay.
think the rest of the community, and obviously the Finance Committee would like to know.
Well, I'd like to go out to the community and see if there's anybody interested, like Boy Scouts or Cub Scouts or whatever. Janet, you had,
I was actually contacted today and also last week. I got a few ideas. Well, first of all, I would like to say, I am going to recommend approval for this. Hopefully, as we voted unanimously as a board to enter into a business transaction. We made a good faith basically a bid on this by unanimous vote, and I think we need to honor that with a unanimous vote to town meeting. I think we, it's just the right thing to do. It's the professional thing to do. When we met and discussed this, and again unanimously approved it, we had even discussed at the time that we may need to draw down from stabilization funds to make this happen. And as I see it, my recommendation is that we're going to use a combination of the sale of real estate and a portion of the overlay surplus funds to use this. So we don't have to go into the stabilization fund for this. It's a unique property. I'm not looking to buy every piece of property that comes up to block a development, but I think this is a very unique parcel. And it would just really be a shame that, if we weren't able to control this and it was to go to a developer. And that's not fear-mongering for anyone who's concerned about that. I did speak with David Hedison today, and he has received some inquiries from affordable housing developers regarding this site. So I think it's a realistic concern that this could be developed. And again, I just don't think that's in the best interest of the town. Going back to a couple of phone calls I received and a couple of emails. One of the ideas was that the Conservation Land Trust could use a portion of this as office space, that they could build educational opportunities and programs around land preservation, kind of tie it in with the mill next door and also the conservation land behind. There was the idea, because there's so much land, that even a portion of it could be used for additional community gardens. And I believe we had spoken as a board that, there's a lot of use of that conservation land back there, not only the soccer fields in the spring and the fall, and some in the summer as well. I'm back there actually quite a bit. But, there's people on the bike trails, there's people hiking, and I think we could use a little extra parking. So I think there's the opportunity to carve that land up a little bit as well and add some additional parking. So those were just some of the ideas that were brought to me, and actually we had discussed as a board as far as the parking. But what I would recommend, again, I would recommend approval of this, and then I would recommend that we would immediately assemble a committee to get ideas, like we did with the Oak Hill Study Committee, and let them report back to us and give us some ideas as a board, the best use of this land and property. And I know there was also the concern that, I think it was voiced that, suddenly the town is in the real estate business. I think we all already are. We own the golf club, we own the CCA, and we own the North Town Hall. Those were all good investments, and I think this one is as well.
Okay, thanks. Good points.
Thank you.
And certainly, the rest of the board can, come up with ideas as well.
Mhm.
Even before we get that committee seated, but.
Well, I'm encouraged that we have these,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I think are
yeah.
valid suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
Good enough.
Yes, we have a few suggestions going into town meeting. I would like to also vote to recommend approval of the article. I think we've all, felt from the beginning a little uneasy about not having an exact use nailed down for this yet, and I'm sure town meeting will have, some concerns with that, but I also feel confident that town meeting will have a healthy debate around this and also bring some new ideas forward, which maybe we haven't thought of yet, or complement some of the ideas we already have. And I also think that town meeting certainly wouldn't vote to approve this without having a committee in place or requesting that we form one anyway, so.
Maybe
we
that
can-
would be part of a motion, or,
Yeah, probably be part of a motion, so maybe wait and get some feedback on what town meeting members think would be a good makeup of the committee, or something like that. I'm not sure if you were recommending we create a committee now, or do it
Well,
wait for town
I think we
meeting.
wait until we see what town
Right.
meeting does. It's only next
Okay.
week, so.
Right. And I just wanted to clarify, because I think that makes sense at town meeting. And, I guess I would vote in favor of it, to bring it forward to town meeting and, see what happens at town meeting as well. But I guess, those are basically my comments for now.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, obviously, I'm in favor of it, and I did tell the guy from MEC that I don't usually vote affirmative on these types of things, but I felt that if it's a good buy for us, and worst thing that could happen is the real estate market could go up, and we can sell it maybe if we can't find a use for it, and maybe make sure that, put a restriction on it so that 40B can't go in there.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I agree with the first comments that you made, that we did make a good faith effort, an offer to purchase. So I will vote to recommend approval and see how town meeting feels about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we have a motion?
do we need
Funding sources.
the funding source?
Just
I
recommend.
think I heard the funding source was going to be for the entire amount of the sale of real estate fund, and then the balance would come from the overlay surplus.
So is that a yes?
Yes, I believe that's what I understand would be the funding.
Okay.
Yeah, so, just recommend approval of Article
Okay.
2.
I will recommend approval of special town meeting Article 2, with the funding source being $116,238 from the sale of real estate, and the balance of that, $373,762 from the overlay surplus fund.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm not opposed. I'm going to go along with it. I just want to state that I wasn't, and I always said that I think town meeting should make the final decisions on
Which
any
they will.
major deals.
Yeah.
And we did make a decision, but as you know, that I was a little bit, the night we took the vote, I thought we were paying a little bit too much money, you know, and, but.
I don't remember
Remember I said I like
hearing
the
that.
460 figure a lot better, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What matters is, it'll go to the town meeting and the people will decide. It'll take a 2/3 vote anyway, so, I mean, that's the fairest way.
Yes,
And-
So you're a yes vote.
he's a yes vote. Yes, thank you. Okay, Article 3.
The next article on the special town meeting warrant pertains to the Mill Road Sewer Pump Station. The request is for $350,000 to reconstruct the pump station, and the funding source is from the Sewer Enterprise Fund free cash, which is, as the board familiar, and those watching, it's a restricted fund that derives from the sewer operations, which can only be used to offset sewer expenditures. And so that would be the request, that is the request under Article 3. The Finance Committee unanimously recommended approval.
Any questions?
If this passes, Paul, how soon will we get started?
Almost done, isn't it?
It's almost done. Yeah, it'll get done, yeah. It'll get done.
Oh, okay.
Right, I mean, basically, they're working on it. They've done preliminary work out there already in the field.
Oh, okay.
So basically, it will get done right away.
Yeah,
Okay.
remember we did this, we issued the bid months
Right,
ago.
okay, yeah, okay.
Okay, we have a motion?
Make a motion to recommend approval of special town meeting Article 3.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Article 4 is the final article on the special town meeting warrant. It's a non-expenditure article. What it is it pertains to the town's brownfield site. And I've got a couple of photos here that for people who may recall back in 2011, we came and did the demolition of the site and so forth. That was the old silicon chip factory that sat vacant for several years. The town acquired the parcel in the summer of 2006, and we've been working for the last 8 years to remediate the site, including the removal of the building, and with grant monies from the DEP, the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, from the Environmental Protection Agency, also from the Mass Development Redevelopment Agency as part of their brownfield support team. The most recent activity on that site was we did a pilot remediation program that proved to be successful. We project from the consultant that the cost to remediate that site is $1.3 million. Now that the legislature a few months ago replenished as part of the state budget the Brownfields Redevelopment Fund with $50 million, later this month, if this moves forward, we believe we'd be successful in obtaining a $1.3 million grant to do the remediation, and then the subsequent buyer would then be responsible for ongoing monitoring and testing on the site. And so what we would do is we would issue an RFP in January for two purposes. One would be to sell and convey the property for the allowed use in this industrial zoned area. If there are no success there, then we ask town meeting for the authorization to come back and allow the community to do a lease of the land for 20 years for solar generation purposes. If neither of those happen, then nothing stays the same, and then we just keep trying. I mean, we did issue an RFP last summer, the board knows. We didn't receive any response for industrial development because of the daunting $1.3 million projected cleanup costs, as well as the ongoing testing and remediation. We did receive at that point some inquiries from solar generation companies. However, they would need a 20-year time frame to recoup the investment. So what happened is they install solar panels on the site. We have taken the time to go to National Grid to determine whether they could take the power off that site into their electrical lines, and they can. So it is a viable site for solar under today's conditions. And then what would happen is some of the revenue from the solar arrays would pay for the ongoing monitoring and testing for the site. And then at least it would be put into some productive use if there is no industrial market. So that's what we're seeking with this article. Again, it's an authorization that would allow the selectmen that if things turn out correctly with the RFPs to execute and move forward. If not, then it remains in the possession of our town treasurer, who's our tax title custodian. And the reason we do that is that we don't want to transfer it to the town, because that would convey to us, if you use it for beneficial use, that liability for the brownfield site. So as you can imagine, we worked extensively with town council in drafting the motion and to make sure that we don't endanger the town in any kind of financial matter.
Any other questions?
And the finance committee unanimously recommended approval of this article as well.
Make a motion to recommend approval of special town meeting Article 4.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks.
That completes the special town meeting. Now there are the remaining articles on the warrant for the fall annual town meeting. The first one is Article 4, which is the amendment to the fiscal year 2015 operating budget. The request before you is for a total of $1,108,591. The largest portion of that would be the $729,091, which has been requested by the school committee for the operating expenses for the school department for the remainder of this fiscal year. And then we also have additional expenses. The really significant one has to do with public safety personnel, and that's namely in the fire department. We have 4 firefighters out on long-term injury, and so with the assistance of the finance director and the town accountant, we reached out to all the general department heads and sort of said, this is if given where we are, a quarter to a third of the way through the fiscal year, based upon how things are trending, if you wish to maintain level services, what would you need to count to finish the year? And obviously, the major one of that 275 is a 225 for the fire department, so they can maintain staffing. Because what happens is when a firefighter goes out on injury, they're basically paying that firefighter who's out injured, and then you have to pay overtime to cover the shifts. And then we have other related costs. As you know, we had to some unexpected retirements early in the police department, notably the police chief, and so that not only drew the fact that we had to pay him his accrued time, but also we had to do an assessment center and other issues. And then obviously we'll have to do another assessment center at the end of the year because the fire chief will be retiring. And then we do have a police officer out on a long-term injury. And then other expenses, again, as you know through it, we're paying for this special audit. And we had some extraordinary asbestos removal costs at the Parker School that facilities undertook, and so forth. So you've seen the list. And so that's what we're requesting. Finance Committee voted 6-1 to support this article. This is our best handle at this point in time, what we believe we all need across the community to finish this fiscal year.
Paul, the paid time off for the fire chief, is that going to go into the next fiscal year?
No. He has to retire by June 30th by the statute.
That's not in there.
So what you've got to understand is we do our best because some of the budgets already have a factor in for overtime and payback. Right. So we believed, and again, what the accountant did is we sort of did the payout. We know what we've got to pay the fire chief.
Oh, okay.
And then what we would have to finish the year. So and again, I don't want the community to think that we're not going to have turnbacks. We will have turnbacks at the end of the year.
Yeah.
This is basically a conservative estimate saying, hey, how do we get to June 30th based on what we know today?
And what about the union settlement?
That's accounted for as well. That's in there as well.
In the budget, but not in this.
Right. It's a question of what you want to list. I mean, we've categorized it as the 4 long-term firefighter injuries, but for that, we would have been able to absorb that as well. So it's a question of what you feel comes in or comes out of the budget. But in essence, that's the number we believe to finish the year with fire department personnel expenses.
I have a quick question. Can you talk about the library personnel step increases?
Yep. Yeah, what happened there was an administrative error in that they projected the scale increase for the library personnel, but neglected to fund the step increase. And so it was, so
Just
basically.
a budget
Yeah,
mistake.
it happens. We make mistakes, folks. And so in essence, again, to close out the year with library services, that's the amount that would be needed.
Okay, so I totaled these up. And by the way, thank you for what you emailed today, listing this out. So on the town side, to finish the year, we need $379,500 in additional funds. Okay. What happened to the town deficit of $443,179?
Well, as we discussed at the Finance Committee meeting last Thursday evening, we were fortunate in that deficit has got absorbed by the community. And I know you watched that meeting, so I don't want to spend too much time repeating it.
Unfortunately, the falling portion.
But what ended up happening is as we moved into the year, the assessors have submitted their certified new growth. The growth came in $400,000 above the projection, so that ate up a good part of that deficit. And then with the adjustment, the overlay, that would be the balance. So we believe that deficit is wiped out. And so again, the only items we have are really have to do with departmental operations.
Okay.
So we have $1 million overlay is what we forecast will be approved by the Department of Revenue. And we're awaiting Department of Revenue certification of our new growth, which has been submitted and likely to hear from any day and probably by the time of town meeting.
So because because it's just revenue that came in that covered it, we don't have to appropriate it?
No, because at the time of the Springtown meeting, the motion was raise and appropriate.
Okay.
And what's happened now is we have sufficient ability to raise
Okay.
those expenses at the time of the town meeting. Now, what I will point out, and I pointed this out at Thursday night's Finance Committee meeting, there was a lot of chagrin expressed at the Springtown meeting that we were operating the town at a deficit by that vote of $600,000+. When you look at these expenses and you look at those which are not sort of extraordinary but maybe recurring, you probably end up at the same place with the deficit. So that means as we start preparing the FY16 budget, looking at the trends and so forth, that we're going to have to account for that $600,000 as we start the preparations for the FY16 budget. And I know the sentiment of this board and that of the Finance Committee that they want a balanced budget at the Springtown meeting, but just recognize that's not going to be an easy accomplishment to maintain level services, given the fact that, again, we've got to absorb the deficit that we have here in the trends, as well as the fact that we're seeing continual pressure on the personnel portion of the budget, which includes benefits. We know we've got, in going into 16, we're going to have the final year of the collective bargaining agreements, and those will be funded. What we don't have set aside is anything we have not settled with the two police unions. That's not included in this request because our charter prohibits us from appropriating money to a department until an agreement is settled, so that'll have to be addressed. And then we're concerned in what's going to happen with our retirement assessment and health insurance and so forth. So that's why I've exercised the caution in my recommendations, which you have and have heard, that we ought not to expend those that we don't need. And in fact, that's why in the later article that I recommend and the Finance Committee recommends that we basically take whatever cash we have remaining after this meeting that's unencumbered, meaning unrestricted, and put it into the stabilization fund so that we can adequately safeguard the town's financial future.
I have another question. So for the schools, so the town needs $379, the schools need $729. But out of that $729, almost 240,000 is for utilities, but was that estimate based on you turning on those arrays in 30 days? Or if this board votes, which I'm getting the sense you will, to go for that other project, but if they're not online till February, is that $240,000 enough?
We don't know. We believe it would not be enough. But again, if we did do that, we would get in revenue that would come into the community, and then we would have to do a supplemental appropriation at the time of spring annual town meeting. And that would be the wise thing to do, obviously, because of the long-term gain. But yes, this assumes that the energy performance contract is implemented as soon as possible, which again would be in the next
In 30
plus
so.
days. But in the event we go the other way, we would not only have an additional expense because those wouldn't be running, but on the other hand, we would begin to see additional revenue as soon as as soon as those SREC credits and other activity takes place. So in essence, you come out ahead by waiting, but yes, we would have to do a budget adjustment at Springtown meeting if that were to happen. But also, we'd have the benefit of knowing at that point what did transpire with the winter in terms of the heating element. But again, as I mentioned earlier in this evening's discussion, 2/3 of the performance contract savings comes from those solar panels.
Here's how I see this, and I'm going to recommend approval, but this is how I'm compartmentalizing this. So I see the town needs to finish the year $379,500. The schools need $491,000. And for utilities, we need an extra $238,000. Because I'm not really faulting the schools for that. I'm not really faulting the town for that, because Paul and his team are working on another suggestion. But that's where my head is right now, and that's what I think is fair to put out there as the message.
But it's the same number.
It's the same number, but it's all how you break it up.
That's fine.
I do have an additional, and I'm not sure if this is just part of the vote, but, so for the budget, we're looking for this appropriation, $1,108,591. But I'd also like to appropriate the excess bond premium of $257,935 towards the capital improvement plan.
I don't believe
And
I don't believe you can do that under this article.
You can't do that
No,
In the spring, you could do it.
in the spring?
can't do
Okay.
it. You can't do it under this article.
No,
He said in the spring.
Right.
Okay.
yeah.
Well, then I'll talk about that in the spring, and the purpose of that is not so that we spend $3,257,000, it's so that we borrow less. And that's something I would like for us as a town, and Matt, you and I have discussed this as part of policy. As a town, I'd like for us to start looking at, how do we borrow less? How do we start reducing our expenses? And I think that's one way. So,
Okay. Can we have a motion then for Article 4?
make a motion to recommend approval of fall annual town meeting, Article 4.
Seconded.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks.
Okay, the next article is Article 6, which was the request, citizen petition by Pat Maloney to relocate vehicle maintenance to the DPW off a road facility. The sponsor of the article has withdrawn the request, so there'll be no action at town meeting.
He did withdraw it?
Yeah, at the Finance Committee on Thursday evening.
Good.
You were there, Bob. Right?
Yeah, I know, but did he withdraw it in writing?
No, he didn't withdraw it in writing, but he notified the Finance Committee
I
and
think
me
we
that
should
he's...
have it as a record that it was withdrawn.
Well, there'll be when it comes to town meeting motion, there'll be no request for action.
Okay, that's fine.
Article 7 is the citizen petition for the demolition of the Center Fire Station at 7 North Road. This is a citizen petition article by Pat Maloney. The request is to transfer from free cash $150,000 to fund that removal of the building and degrade the site to the level of the roadway. The Finance Committee voted 6-1 to support this article.
I just have a quick question. I must have missed something, because when Mr. Maloney came before us, he gave us some documents, and the bid document and an overview of the costs, but it totals up to $125. 125,000. So why are we recommending 150,000?
Because I believe he's asking the $25,000 contingency.
Yeah, it's on this one.
Okay, so now a 20% contingency fee.
Yes, and I think he explained at the time that if obviously it wasn't expended, then it would get released back to the town's general fund at a later date. But and I think there was a question of you don't know what you're going to get in terms of hazardous materials until you get into the building and do the survey and actually open up the building. And I think that's why he wanted that cushion. But I think he stated that he fully expected that it would certainly be less than 150 and probably would be about 125.
Who was the one vote against?
That was Strat Dukakis.
Same as on the previous article?
Yes.
Could we get the petitioner to withdraw this one, too?
No, he was at the Finance Committee. He's not withdrawing this article, Bob.
Huh?
No, he went to the
That's
Finance
his
Committee. and-
prerogative.
and
Yeah, I know,
informed
but
the
I'm
town
just
meeting.
asking,
No,
rhetorical.
I believe he made it known to the Finance Committee that he's not withdrawing this request.
Well, and I don't think he's going to withdraw it and the town manager supports it, so.
But quite honestly, this is a Board of Selectmen action that is part of our goals that we did earlier.
Well, I think it was part of our goals, yeah, to determine a use for it,
Yeah.
and what to do with it going forward. I mean, quite frankly, I would support this article. I do agree with what is written in the excerpt here from the Daigle report, that this building is not a viable candidate for repair or renovation. From the outside, yes, it looks like a sturdy building, but once you get inside and you look at the, what's there, I think it looks, it's really worth that lot of land, I think, is worth more without the building on it than with a building in that condition on it. I think we still have a lot of options on what we can do with it. If we do take that building down, we still could even have a museum and an information center, as Mary Donovan would like, or a lot of other options that we could go forward with on that. But I think it makes sense to take this down after the fire department moves out. I think to do otherwise, as has been stated, it would be boarded up, and it doesn't have that's not a nice visual for people coming into the center of town, looking at it from, across the street on the common. So that's my thoughts on this article.
We are in the boarded up comment is like a scare tactic.
Well, I believe it.
It could be boarded up.
I believe
It could be boarded up and look very nice if it was boarded up properly.
Okay.
Okay? But, Daigle Engineers is only one person who's reported on this. I'd like to get a second opinion and see what someone else would think of it.
Okay.
Well, I mean, going back to the report, they do say on page 5, please note that during the course of this review, we did not observe any structural concerns requiring immediate action. So if we were to delay this to Springtown meeting, put together a group that can study this, we hold an open session, and again, we get ideas, we may end up at the same conclusion, but we've allowed for that public input, that we see somebody has put flyers together, they've done their own mailings, and they're trying to hold on to this piece of property at least to be heard with ideas. And I do think we owe it to the community to do that. I mean, I don't think anything in my mind has changed from our meetings in the summer, and we had a couple of meetings where, we talked about our goals, and nothing was brought to us to say, don't worry about including this as a goal because that building is so unsound that it's going to fall at any moment. It needs to be boarded up. That concern was never brought to us. So
Well, okay.
we made it a goal.
We made it a goal to decide what to do with it, whether to, sell, lease, whatever.
It's only a recommendation right now, anyway.
Right, it's only a recommendation, right. And, I mean, it's my understanding, even if this article were to pass, I mean, we don't have to go forward with the demolition, correct? I mean, this is just to authorize that funding. If in the interim, somebody came up with some idea that the board thought was viable, we could go with that.
Well, if town meeting approved it, though, wouldn't we have to go back to town meeting for them to?
To remove the funding? I don't believe so, would we?
No,
Change,
town
no?
meeting is an appropriating body, a legislative body. The Board of Selectmen is an executive body. The town meeting can only provide, as Pat noted, the chair noted, town meeting provides the appropriation, but it's up to the Board of Selectmen to execute. If the board doesn't execute, the money just sits there until such time as town meeting takes the money and uses it for a different purpose.
I see this as a discussion that we could have again in the spring. I see no reason to rush forward on this. If you're not going to demo anyways over the winter, then there's nothing to lose.
I think the intent would be to demo over the winter. The fire chief is...
We're talking after the first of the year now, Paul.
Right, what would happen is if town meeting appropriates this, we'll immediately go out and secure bids for the asbestos survey and the construction, and while that's taking place, you're right, it's probably going to happen after the first of the year. But if you wait till Springtown meeting, it probably doesn't happen till the 1st of July.
Right, we don't start any of that if we don't
start
have
any of
this
that
money.
process, exactly. So it's just a matter of process. What the fire chief has informed us is because he believes that the safety element of that building, when they leave there in the next month or so, he's going to put a big sign in front of that building for public safety purposes, basically informing the community that the fire station is no longer located there, and that if you need, and that therefore go to, 50 Billerica Road, and that he intends to board that building to FEMA standards. And I think it's because of what he considers to be the risk of that building sitting vacant, and therefore, what would happen is we still would have to do some activity in that building because of the water and drainage problems that go on that take place at that building. We don't want to see issues in the center because, as you know, the elevation change in that building. If somebody's going to vandalize or cause problems, they're probably going to do it from the rear of the building and get in, and issues of the pipes and the furnace and running and so forth. Because the other thing is, if you do close it, you don't want to lose the building, because then it'd be a sick building. You don't want to have mold and other issues. So, so there is an ongoing cost, and also we'd have to notify our insurer that it's a vacant building, and then have to get a special policy and expend the funds to insure the vacant building. So that there are actions regarding whichever action town meeting takes that will take place over the next several months.
So if this goes through and someone comes forward with a great idea, how long are we, and then we decide, although the money's been appropriated, we're not going to have the demolition, how long a time are we going to give somebody to come?
I'm not going to speculate. I have no idea. I mean, it probably wouldn't be, we'd have, as Paul said, we'd have to go through all the, evaluations for the hazardous material assessment and the others before we start any demolition.
Okay.
So.
I mean, do we just ignore what Mary Donovan brought forward?
I don't think anybody is ignoring it, but I think we have to be in my mind, we have to be practical.
Okay, go ahead.
Are you sure you?
Paul, who says it has to be FEMA?
The fire chief.
But
And the building
If I were to
inspector.
call the State House, would they tell me the same thing?
I don't know who at the State House is going to answer that question for you, Bob, but at the local level, the authorities that I'm concerned with are the
Yeah.
fire chief and the building inspector. Both of them have told me they're concerned about that building sitting vacant.
Right.
And they have the authority to they're the ones that put the red X's on the building and those type of items.
Right. I
And if
understand
that's
that.
if that's their request, then I think you're going to see that happen.
I'd like to know what other towns have done. I mean, Westford's had several stations closed. I'd like to see what they had to do around theirs. But I'll look into it.
Yeah. I know one of theirs is still in use for storage and things like that, so it
Yeah,
is
they use it
heated
for-
and
yeah.
electricity.
Oh, we've
and
temporarily
whatnot.
closed the firehouse too in South when we had the budgetary issues.
Right.
And then there was a big sign put out in the front saying, station closed due to budget cuts.
Was it boarded up?
And we didn't board the
No,
windows.
because, no, it was rotated. It was, well, it was.
It wasn't
open.
closed for the same reason.
Right, it wasn't, right.
So it was closed,
It-
but not for this reason.
But it was
It's-
Well,
closed
go ahead,
for
Matt.
full time.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's an interesting idea getting the appropriation now, so we wouldn't have to essentially put it in free cash and then, I guess, take it out if we wanted to do it in the spring. But I think we've all sort of agreed from the beginning that a little more due diligence or a little more time to have reviewed this would have been helpful from the beginning. It did sort of come up a little bit last minute, and I know, I think it's good that we have a report telling us some about the structural conditions, but I still feel like as part of the due diligence, I would have liked to see some numbers from somebody regarding potential, like renovation costs or something like that, or what maybe could have been done, just so we have an idea of what it would have taken to renovate it, or what some options and uses were. I think that's what we were trying to get, and I feel like we've only seen a report saying that it's not structurally sound, which is, you know, very helpful. And you know, I think I anticipate supporting this funding, because I think there's definitely a strong possibility that you know, the building will need to be raised. I would, you know, be interested in, you know, looking at some other options, you know, but they would have to come pretty quickly.
That question was asked at last Thursday's Finance Committee meeting, and Pat Maloney, who's the chair of the Permanent Building Committee, and is familiar, obviously, with that building and the trade in general, he gave an estimate of between $1 and $2 million to rehab that building, because, again, when you change the use, you've got to change the code requirements as well. So it's not only the structural, it's the seismic loads, it's the whole electrical, you've got the fire suppression system and so forth. I mean, you know, you have to bring it to today's building code standards, and that's what makes it such a prohibitive cost to rehab, as opposed to just tear down and knock new and build new, if that's what the town chose to do.
Yeah.
But again, yeah, that was his answer on Thursday evening.
Right.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I will make a motion to recommend to not approve fall annual town meeting Article 7.
Seconded.
Okay, the motion is to not approve, not recommend approval of Article 7. All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. So that means,
I-
how about if we have a positive?
No, I'll make a motion that we do recommend approval
Okay,
of Article 7.
Second.
all in favor of that one?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, thank you. All right,
The next article is Article 8 on the warrant. That would be a request to use free cash to reduce the tax levy. Finance Committee recommends no action on this article, and I also concur with that recommendation.
any discussion?
I disagree. I would like to see an allocation of $700,000 from free cash to the tax levy, because I would like to see a balance of the needs in this town. I think we're addressing budget needs, you know, some capital needs here, you know, demolishing the fire station, looking to preserve some land in town. And I think overwhelmingly in the community from the residents, and they may be silent about it in terms of, you know, not coming to the podium, but I think the last election showed that people are interested in us thinking of ways and acting ways to reduce and control the growth of property taxes. And so I would like to see us put $700,000 of the free cash towards the tax levy.
Seconded.
That was a motion.
That
I think
wasn't a
we're
motion.
discussing.
It was a discussion.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I guess I'll go next. I know I have been in favor of some tax relief in the past, and in generally supportive of the idea in some sense. How I'm sort of feeling this year is, given some of what we're already doing to take action to adjust some budgets this year, and some uncertainty, at least in the school budget going into 2016, and the fact that we have questions about whether we can fully fund OPEB within the budget. Right now, I feel more comfortable putting more money into our stabilization fund so we can get closer to the 7.5%. And what I would say is, I think if we were at 7.5% in our stabilization fund, and we were able to fully fund OPEB, which is a liability that we're incurring every month, or at least $1 million, which we've committed to, if we were at that place and we had an extra $1 million+ I think then I would be more inclined to put some of that towards free cash. But until we're at that level with our reserves, and until we're able to, fund our current liabilities, I don't feel like we should be putting money back until we're funding what we already need to do. So that's basically my position this year.
I agree, and I'm not sure we're certain of what our expenses are gonna be. I think they could still be, it's possible there could still be some surprises, so, you know, I think the safe way to do it is to put in a stabilization fund and hope we'll be ready for whatever comes up.
Now, just to be clear, my proposal is still gonna leave close to $700,000 towards the stabilization fund. So I'm not looking to, not put any towards stabilization fund. And I agree. I mean, I think the Finance Committee reserve, we're going to have some issues this year. And I think one of the issues, I think we've already kind of discussed, is the utilities that may come back to bite us. Schools could have, some additional sped issues. I understand that. And yes, I'd like to continue to do what we can to build up the stabilization fund, but not for the purpose of just paying the bills. That's my concern is, we're looking to put all this money away because we need to pay for utilities and basic operating expenses. And that's where I'm starting to get really nervous as a town, the path that we're on here. But again, I see this as we need to balance as much as we can all of our needs. And,
To that point, I would want to echo the point that I don't want to see the town in a situation where we are paying from ongoing operating costs from the stabilization fund. So I would echo that portion of the comment. I think just personally with a little bit of the uncertainty maybe around some of those things right now, I think until we have some of that figured out, it would make more sense to keep it in there right now personally. But, I do share some of those sentiments.
And Matt, as we've talked about, and Darlene, you had mentioned at a tri-board meeting, if we're ever going to put money towards the tax levy to try to control the growth of property taxes, once we do that once, and you guys learned this a couple of years ago, you have to do it consistently.
Right.
So at some point, you got to jump in. You can't just kind of dip your toe in. You can't stand there and analyze it and talk about how great it would be to be inside that pool. You got to jump in at some point. So I see this as the year to jump in, and this is the first year that we make a commitment as a town to consistently put a certain amount of money, and you and I have talked about this, somewhere around the $500,000 to $700,000 range towards the tax levy. And I understand you're still standing there and you don't want to jump in the water, but
Well, I've jumped in. I just think this isn't the year, given some of this uncertainty. So it's just
then
a
you're still
disagreement.
standing on the side. You haven't jumped in.
Okay.
It's a commitment. I understand, and it is scary, but I think it gives the town a good balance of addressing all the needs.
Yeah, man, I don't know if we were in any better shape 3 years ago when we did this, or 4 years ago.
We clearly were.
Clearly we were.
We were in a
We
much
weren't dealing
better
with the
shape.
current situation, Bob.
Well, yeah, but there's still, like Janet says, there is still money we can put into stabilization, and stabilization should be used for emergency uses, right? Not for budgeting purposes. So if we have a problem with the budget, we shouldn't take it out of the stabilization fund. Now, the other thing that bothers me here is that we're going into town meeting, and we're asking for $1 million to straighten out some budgets that have problems. Now, granted, some of that is the school department, some of it's the town. But we're also asking for $1 million in OPEB every year. So the employees and the past employees are getting taken care of, and the current employees are getting taken care of in the budget, but the taxpayer isn't getting taken care of. And this is below, $700,000 is below the $1 million that we're asking for each one of those items. So I think it's a good time to do it. I think our stabilization is at a good number. We don't have to have it at 7.5%. We can have it at 7.2. There's no law that says you have to. So I support the $700,000 but I'm sure you're not surprised.
What was our liability, 117,000? Is that what he said tonight for OPEB? 117 million?
Right, and what he didn't get in, but what's in the report is our OPEB liability grew by $3 million this year.
Yeah.
That's in the report, $3 million. So
But
we're at a point now where we've got like a $10,000 per resident OPEB liability.
Paul
in this
says he
community.
doesn't want to burden the children of tomorrow, but
That's correct.
we're being burdened by decisions that were made 30 years ago.
So what do we do about
Yeah.
that? Ignore it and let it grow so that it's worse for those that come after us?
Higher and higher
No.
every year. I mean,
No.
If we appropriated 1 million and our liability was 3 million, we only covered a third of the problem.
I understand what you're
So
saying.
you're suggesting we do less than that?
Well, other towns are.
We
Okay,
know
so
that,
that,
Okay, so,
Right.
as far as Article 8, right now, the motion has no money in it, so there would have to be a motion made at the
Right.
town meeting, is that correct?
right, well, the finance committee recommended that all available funds at the end of the evening that would be put into the stabilization fund. And again,
They can
not having
still-
taken a position on the Mill Road property, they didn't know what that number would be, but they
Right.
didn't recommend anything for tax relief. That was real clear. That was unanimous. And then they did recommend that the rest go into the stabilization fund, which is the next and final article. So that was real clear
Well,
that
they
evening.
could still put the remainder into the stabilization.
Although it'd be like 1.12 million if we did Mill Road, is that
Yeah,
right?
I don't know where the 1.4 came from, but yes, that would be, the number would not be 1.4. The
1.6 didn't include Mill
What are you
Road.
saying?
I mean, if you bring it all the way
Okay.
back to where
Okay,
we
well,
stood.
let's finish up with
Yeah.
Article 8,
Right.
what we want to do with Article 8.
Well, I would like to make a motion to recommend approval for $700,000 from free cash be applied towards the property tax levy.
Second.
Okay, now, understanding that's really not what Article 8
No,
says
but
at
it's
this
gonna be
point.
when I get there.
Okay. All right, so that's the motion that's going to be made supposedly by Bob at town meeting for Article 8. So we can take a vote on that, because right now Article 8 doesn't have anything. I'm okay with taking a vote on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
No, okay. That motion fails, but so noted. Okay, now we can
Do
go
you-
on to.
Do you have another motion on that article? Or what- The finance committee recommends no action, that's why I'm asking.
Right.
I don't know if the
Well, I don't know,
board.
do we need to take a vote to have no action on
I
it?
think
Yes.
you recommended
Yes.
no
Yeah, we
action
usually
based
do.
on.
Yeah,
what
you do.
said.
No action is a favorable, is an action at town meeting.
Then Matt will take another motion.
Because that way you have a position, otherwise you have no position.
Right, I make a motion that the Board of Selectmen recommends no action on Article 8.
Okay, all in favor of that? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
All right,
Okay.
now we can go to 9.
And the final article is to transfer available funds into the stabilization fund. Again, it's going to depend upon what action takes place in the earlier articles. What the Finance Committee recommended to do was to basically say that any available funds at the remainder of the evening be put into the stabilization fund. Problem in this case is that you really don't know.
Well,
You've got differing opinions, but that's what the Finance Committee recommended.
But we'll figure it out.
Right.
I mean, I'm okay with
Yeah.
exactly that wording, yeah.
That wording of it.
I mean, I think you can't have anything else, because we don't know how the others are going to come out.
Right.
So,
Make a motion to recommend approval of fall annual town meeting, Article 9,
Do we want to put in?
with an amount to be determined.
With it, yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
all right, I'll
that's
second that.
close enough.
yeah. Oh, yeah, no, I agree.
Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good.
Well, I've got if you don't mind, I just got one more quick question on the budget. The overlay surplus,
Mhm.
why was that not brought to us earlier? Why was that brought to us just recently and not, at the end of the year?
It can't be brought to you until the Board of Assessors determined that there's surplus in the fund.
Right.
And I believe that action took place a few weeks ago.
Okay, but why, I guess I'm wondering why the delay.
I think you'd have to ask the Board of Assessors that question. I don't
Do they
have the
report,
answer.
they report to you, though,
I
right?
appoint the Board of Assessors.
Okay.
And it's subject to your confirmation. My understanding is at the end of the fiscal year, and this is what you've got to understand with the dynamic of this, is the overlay that sits there today isn't the same overlay that was there on June 30th, nor was the same available on August 30th, and so forth. And we came back and asked the Board of Assessors what their balance was, and we used 300 some odd thousand of it to do the property revaluation that was approved back at the first session of Fall Town Meeting. And then after that, when we had this fiscal crisis, we went back and asked them to stand there at status and vote the anything that was available, and that's the number that they sent back to us, which was the amount that they signed and I sent to you the other evening, which was the 668.
Right. Well, I
in the fund,
guess I
so-
can ask them, because on the town accountant's spreadsheet dated August 30th, 2014, I do see excess overlay of $940,990. And I do understand that it's, the assessors bring that forward to us. I guess I'm just wondering why it wasn't brought forward.
Well, the board has
earlier.
the board has a liaison to the assessors. I'm not sure who it is offhand, but I mean, we can ask
But
it, or we
it's
could ask
sort
the
of asking the question, sometimes if you don't know to ask the question, you don't. And it says, shall be transferred by the Board of Assessors upon their own initiative.
Exactly.
Again, I'm just,
Well,
exactly. I am
something-
curious as to why they didn't bring it forward.
Something we can keep an
earlier.
eye on going forward.
Yeah, now that we know, we
we
can
know.
keep an eye on it going forward. It just,
But I also think that the town accountant gave you a 5-year, that I requested and then sent to you, was a 5-year analysis on the overlay account, and up until the prior fiscal year, that fund was in deficit. And that was why the overlay amount went up. And then fortunately, and we saw this, remember when we closed the year and John Souza, our finance director, gave his report, he noted an extraordinary level of tax collection. Was it 99% or something like that, which is the highest I've ever had sitting here as a town. So again, it's easy to look back and say, oh, the decision was obvious. But I don't think anybody could foresee that level of collection, and therefore hence that ability to free up overlay. And again, I think, we as a community tend to budget conservatively and do the best we can. A question came up earlier this evening, well, how did we wipe out the deficit we had at the spring town meeting? Well, our new growth came up greater than was forecast. And again, we're going to have that same decision now. We're now going to have to budget for a period that starts July of 2015 through June 30th of 2016. And, there are no Nobel Prize economists sitting in this room or in this community who have that kind of vision. But what we do see is alarming. And so it's, and when I say alarming, what was the first thing that happened the day after the election? The current governor said, oh, by the way, we got a state shortfall in the state's budget, and that has to be addressed, and so forth. So, and I don't think anybody was talking about that until that time. So, we do the best we have with the information that we have available to us. And as we said earlier, we're hoping that the Department of Revenue will approve an overlay of $1 million for this year's budget. But that's not a number we choose. That's a number that's approved
no, I
by the
understand that's
Department of
not a
Revenue.
number that we
So
choose,
that's our
but it
best
is a
estimate.
number that's been accumulating over the past few years.
No, I think it was past 2 years. If you look at the chart that I
I'm
gave you
looking at it.
from the
Okay,
accountant.
I got the one from the accountant.
Wasn't on our agenda to talk about tonight. We do have the
But
assessors.
it is around the budget.
But we do have our assessors coming in at our next meeting. I think it's something that maybe we can talk to them about
Okay,
and see
that would
how
be
we
great.
handle it going forward. We do have some more things to handle on our current agenda. And I know. Okay, so the next thing is the Financial Policy Subcommittee update. So maybe that falls right in line with that.
Matt, do you want to discuss that, or do you want me to bring it up? Have you changed your mind on anything there?
Well, no, for this time around, it's just a couple minor things, really. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. We scratched out one thing that the town accountant didn't think was necessary in there.
Okay.
We added sort of a little bit of clarifying language under 2-1.1 under the objectives. instead of just saying minimize cost of government, we said minimize cost of government and minimize the growth of property taxes as one of the, objectives. And under the general fund, we put in the request that a balanced budget be brought forward at Springtown meeting for approval. Again, not to confuse the fact that we do always have to end the year with a balanced budget. Of course, I think we understand that. I couldn't 100% tell how everyone felt about this. I seem to think that there was some general support around this before, and I guess my personal feelings to start, before I realized that this may be an ongoing thing, it was my understanding that when we did it, it would be sort of a one-time thing for OPEB to start the year with an unbalanced budget, but hopefully be able to absorb it into the budget. It looks like that may not be possible for a few years now, and I think I just personally don't feel comfortable going through that scenario each year. Not because I don't think we're going to balance the budget at the end of the year. I have 100% faith that we will, and we have to do that. But just looking back to last year, the conversations that I had to have with people and the phone calls and the email, and I know if we move forward each year, I just have the feeling that the newspapers are going to report Chelmsford starts their budget in a deficit for the second year in a row or for the third year in a row, even though we are going to end the year in a budget. And I don't see a way that we can possibly educate the entire community about the fact that this doesn't mean we're going to have a balanced budget or we can't balance our budget. I understand the dynamics of it, and I supported it the first year. But I know I can't go through year after year of people in the community thinking that we don't know how to budget, because that's the persona that a lot of people felt from this. We can't balance our budget. And I know it was just a sentiment that was out there, but I saw it, very firsthand, and I'm uncomfortable doing that year over year. So that's my feelings on it.
Okay. Janet, do you want to add anything to that, since you're also on that subcommittee?
I guess I'm, I appreciate your support on this. For me, it's less about having to explain to the community. And for me, it's more of just just what I believe in. And I do not believe, either as a business, even as a family, and especially for the town, that we would start the year in a deficit budget. So, I believe this is a good policy. It starts off the year with the right tone. Like I said, to me, it's a no-brainer. It's just a good financial policy.
Bob, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm fine with the changes. I was looking for more changes, but
This is a first.
Yeah, I realize that we
pass.
gotta
Steps.
It's gonna be
walk before we run. So yeah, I'm in favor of it.
I would also say, to some of the comments that were brought forward last time, I think I want to address the fact that I understand, and I tried to explain this a year ago, and it was tough to get the message across, that some of our unfunded liabilities, such as OPEB, we don't have to put in the budget, even though it is a growing liability. So the fact that we don't put it in the budget at the beginning of the year allows us to appear that we're starting the fiscal year with a balanced budget, when in fact we're not. So, I just want to make that clear, that I think at the end of the day, our liabilities are growing, and we can not include them in the budget, and try and tackle them at the end of the year. But I think it's just important for us to all address, when we're thinking about the budget moving forward, that we do have some, significant liability with the OPEB that we do need to address at some point, and it's there, whether we put it in the budget at the beginning of the year, whether we put it in the budget at all or not fund it because we don't have to. It's a large liability, and we do have to think about it every year.
Okay. George, have any thoughts?
No. Is it harder to explain option A or option B to the public?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That it's there, but we're not going to show it, or it's not there. I mean, we can't bullshit the people. Pardon my English, but And
I
that's
think you
ba-
should
that's
say
what
that
you
on
say.
TV.
Well, I said it, I'm sorry.
Is there a beep back?
I don't really care. I said it. I mean, and that's basically what you said. And I mean,
Yeah, it
I
is.
have, you know,
It is.
Except you said it a little bit more
Well, yeah, I said it a little
gracefully
bit
than-
politely.
well, I mean, it's just, you know,
That's why we gotta keep
How
you
I
around,
feel.
George.
that's how I feel, you know.
So how do you feel?
How do I feel?
Yeah, do you support it? Do you not support it?
I have all the confidence in the world in Paul. I've worked there with him for 6 years. I'm not saying that you people don't have any confidence in him, but, I mean, he's telling the people right up front what it is. And I mean, I don't think there's anything better than to just, I mean, and I know it's gonna get worse. I mean, so.
Well, let me ask you this. Are you okay with the schools starting off the year with a deficit budget?
No,
What if
I
they
mean, I don't like to see what happened with the
What if they give us a budget
schools.
of, 800,000 in the hole, saying, well, somehow throughout the year, we'll come up with the money? Are you okay with that?
I haven't worked with the schools. My only experience with the schools has been recently. So, obviously, that would kind of weigh my opinion right now. But, so I can't give you an honest answer. I mean, if they said that they had a way of making it up, but they don't have the same type of budget we do.
Right. They're a department of the town. They're not,
Right.
they're
You
not.
know
But
what I
it-
mean? We
no, I
have
understand.
more revenue sources and more ways maybe of where we save money, we can portion to the,
Right.
as we have done, this year. I mean, so, I haven't seen anything that Paul has done with any budget that, we haven't had a problem with a budget at the end of the year in 6 years I've been on the board. So, I mean, I'm not, if it ain't broke, I'm not, I think it's great that people have different ideas and have
I agree.
suggestions and things like that. I mean, you can't progress without that. But I was just laughing with Matt when he said, well, I mean, we don't have to put it there. We know it's there, but we don't have to let the people, I mean.
Well, I think that's a good point to make. I mean, the
Yeah.
spring town meeting, budget in reality is a best estimate and that gets more firmed up as we start spending. When we get to fall town meeting, we usually have to make an adjustment to it, and then very often we have to make another adjustment in the spring. So, I mean, I guess I would be okay with this being in the policy, knowing that fact. I mean, look at this year, even though we came out starting with what looked like an unbalanced budget, but for these other expenses, we would not have had to have budget adjustments at this time of year. So, I guess that goes to how you make your estimates and budget recommendations.
I would just point out the fact that when that vote took place at the April town meeting, we were asked the question of, will you have the free cash, to cover that deficit of the 600,000? And at that time, we notified the town meeting that our best projection from the financial officials of the town that we would have free cash of between $2 and $2.5 million. And we did. And I think, the town meeting put their confidence in us, and I think, we met that expectation. And I think, and again, and I think talking about budgets going forward, I mean, the whole genesis of the tri-board meeting was to meet these three challenges: OPEB funding, tax relief, full-day kindergarten. And at the very beginning, we said we could do 2 out of 3 of those. And I think, quite frankly, that opportunity still remains today. It's up for the community to decide what they want to do. So if next year the deficit isn't, the shortfall isn't to fund OPEB, but it's to fund full-day kindergarten, then the town meeting can make that choice, and that, of course, can come forward. I mean, that's the point of letting people know. And you're right, that's why you do have a stabilization fund. Because imagine what would have happened had this crisis happened a year ago and we had $890,000 in free cash. We wouldn't have just said we can't do it. We would have gone into the stabilization fund. And so again, that's just but again, the concern I have is looking at the trends going forward. And clearly, if there's anything that these past few weeks have shown us, there's an alarming trend. You know, and in terms of operation costs for the community, and I think the more information we get in terms of next year's costs aren't any better. You know, we're going to see that, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to see that in retirement costs, we're going to see it in health insurance costs, and that's, you know, and I think that's why we you know, I think you said it right. If we give full disclosure, then I think that the town meeting, you know, can make an informed decision, and that's what we try to do. Thank you.
I agree. Again, Paul, I share your concerns that, you know, I see that the schools have these expenses now we're trying to cover, and that, you know, they've taken out of some of their revolving accounts.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, just like with the OPEB, you know, the concern is that those costs represent their true cost of doing business.
Mm-hmm.
But with all that in mind and all our challenges, I think the financially prudent and professional thing to do is to start the year and come to Springtown meeting with a balanced budget. And I have confidence in you, Paul, that throughout the year, we're going to get it done.
But let's look at reality of that situation. If we take a less conservative, here's the problem. If you take a less conservative approach, you can't do anything in the fall. The school set, and really a lot of it pertains around the schools. You can't go back and realistically add a third grade classroom in October after town meeting because we want to give more money to the schools. And look at the pain and the anguish that's happened in this community because we cut 3 positions and I use we because it's the town of Chelmsford, in the school department. Well, if you're going to, you know, to basically force a more aggressive approach to have a balanced budget in the spring, well, what happens, again, between the time you leave town meeting in April and then you don't know your local aid, you don't know your new growth, and you don't know the particulars of the economy in terms of what's going to happen with the stock market and everything else. Well, what happens if you come to the fall and then your growth isn't realized, your local aid isn't realized? Then you're going to be cutting people, and that's something, as we noted, we haven't had to do that in years. The worst time was when we had the mid-year local aid cuts, and so that's why we do it this way, is to basically say, hey, you know what, you know, it's you know, we try to be sound, but what's happened this year is we emptied all the drawers out. The overlay surplus, the free cash, the sale of real estate fund, you know, the excess bond premium. Well, when we close this year, we're not, as we said the other night, we're not going to have $2.6 million in free cash. Right. It's not going to be there. And so come around if you know, if the goal is, hey, you know, we want, we want a more aggressive budgeting tone, then in essence, you're going to subject yourselves to that level of expectation. Is that if you want to shoot for the middle, then you're going to have a 50% chance you're going to be over and a 50% chance you're going to be under. And the problem is, like most things, and what we learned in the last several weeks is, they don't mind too much if you're under, but when you're over and you got to make the cuts, all hell breaks loose. Yeah. So if you want to blame me for the amount of free cash or the amount of balances we've had and available funds, then I'll take that blame. But again, when you sit in this seat, you got to understand what the choices are. And here's the difficulty I'm going to have. I've got to produce a budget by charter the end of January of this year. Well, because we got a new governor, the new governor doesn't have to release his budget till February. So now not only am I not going to know new growth, we're not going to know local aid because the legislature is not going to do anything. We're going to be with a big period of uncertainty, and that's the challenge. Because what we're missing in all of this is what we're trying to deliver as a community. We talk about free cash, available funds, stabilization fund, tax relief, everything else. What we don't talk about is what are we trying to deliver for the residents. And maybe there isn't a consensus of that. And maybe that's what we tried to do and weren't able to do with the tri-board meetings. But the question becomes what do we want to be as a community and what services do we want to provide? And if you're going to wish to provide, an exceptional level of services, meaning the services that this community has come to expect, then you have to do that. I mean, what we're talking here is level services. And that's what we're looking at for the year ahead. And as we said, that's going to be a difficult challenge to meet. But it's not a difficult challenge to budget for. But it becomes a question of what can we do? And this is the struggles that we're going to have, in the weeks ahead, because we're behind in our budget preparation, as you can imagine. By now, we already would have started the capital planning process, starting those meetings. We're behind, and we'll get the job done. But I just want to point out to people that at the end of the day, and I'm sure some of this will get discussed at town meeting next Monday night and so forth, is, what is it that we wish to deliver the residents in terms of the services they want in the community? And too often we get lost in the numbers, but don't step back and look at, well, what services do we want to have? And again, we've heard that discussion on kindergarten. In the past, we've heard it in terms of staffing fire stations, all stations, and so forth. So, the policy is fine, but you're right. What I can produce a budget document that leaves out essential information in terms of liabilities. It would be a paper balanced budget, but to bring it back to it, it wouldn't really reflect the true operating costs or the goal, which was in our OPEB priority, which was to fund $1 million towards OPEB on an annual basis as part of our formula. And in fact, the end of the next month, we're going to have to re-engage a new 2-year actuarial study, and we're going to have to give them some assumptions as what we're doing going forward. And so that's what it all came down to. So thank you for your indulgence, Madam Chair.
I just have one other thing. Okay. I have a concern that presenting a balanced budget is an aggressive approach to budgeting. I just want to say that. And Matt, I understand what you were saying, and that perhaps we can't fund the full OPEB amount, which would then quite possibly create a deficit budget, leading with a deficit budget. But we fund in there what we can afford to create a balanced budget. And then at the end, we make up for it through free cash. Because, in talking with the Department of Revenue, a good policy is to have a certain percentage of free cash each year. And we do have that. We have some highs and we have some lows, but that free cash is there. And we do need to live within our means, and I think we can do it. So I'm very comfortable with this policy change.
And to that point, as far as how I feel about the budgeting moving forward, I'm not trying to say personally as one board member that I want Paul or your management team to budget any differently as far as like more to the middle versus more conservatively, because you've done a fantastic job in the past, and we've always had enough free cash or funds to manage the budget. I think what me essentially for this means is I would prefer to have enough OPEB funded in the budget that we can afford and have the rest appropriated at town meeting to make up the $1 million, which I know we had been doing for a few years. And I know it's an appearance of starting the budget balance at the beginning of the year, but that's my preference. And this is also more of just a way, and again, we had started to talk about this particular line item before a lot of these budget issues came up, and it had nothing to do with the way we were, managing or budgeting. It was more just as a goal moving forward as a town, for Paul, the board, for everyone. It should be our goal to present a balanced budget in the spring, and I think that's really how this came about. And when we originally talked about it, we were hoping it was a one-year event.
Would you like me to make a motion?
Yeah, I just have one thing to say, though. I don't think we should be always picking on OPEB. I mean, I think we made a point a couple of years ago, maybe it was just this year, the Finance Committee and I agreed with them that the OPEB should be, that $1 million obligation that we have committed to should be part of the budget. So, I don't think it should always be OPEB that's taking the hit if it's a balanced budget and there's not the funds there. So
That's really the cause, though. I mean, ultimately.
You can't
yes and
blame
no.
it. Yeah, yes and no.
And I mean, to me personally, and again, just as one board member, if we were to approve this policy and OPEB was taken out and we still needed $150,000 or $200,000, and Paul or you came to us, the board, as an individual and said, we have an average of $1.5 million in free cash every year. I'd like us to start with this balanced budget because it's an even budget, but it has a little bit of a deficit essentially that we're going to make up in this way. I would probably still support that moving forward, but I view these goals as our policies as goals, which is my
I think we're ready for a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the financial policies as amended, as presented.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, I had sent out an email last week about a proposed meeting schedule for the rest of the year. I wanted to know if anybody had any concerns with it. One thing I will note, I said on this that December 22nd and 29th, there would be no meetings. We possibly may have a tri-board meeting during one of those, depending on how John Sullivan is coming along with his management processes, suggestions for the school department. But other than that, does anybody have any issues with any of the other
I don't
dates?
think there's enough, Pat.
I think there's enough. You
We
want
should add
to
a
have
couple
them
more.
twice a week?
Why not?
Are you lonely,
We've got a
George?
public-
Yeah.
Yes.
You're not kidding.
Yes, and we do in this schedule have a public input session scheduled for December 8th. Hoping we can keep to that. We had scheduled one earlier and we had to move, so hoping to have that, and at that session, hoping to get some ideas for what we could do, maybe with 101 Mill Road, with the fire station, and maybe resident comments on how to handle trash pickup when we have our new contract, whether, how people feel about automated versus manual pickup. So
What
just
about having it in a different location?
well, we can talk about that.
Okay.
We still have a little time to talk about that.
Okay.
Wondering if Mr. Chase is going to be available on the 8th, because he's one of the few people who comes to every one of our public input sessions.
We're gonna have a good audience for it, let me tell you.
I came to.
All right.
True.
Me and
You and
We
Sam.
have some appointments.
Yeah, I have 3 appointments for the board's confirmation this evening. I seek your confirmation to appoint Donald Van Dyne to the Chelmsford Center for the Arts Advisory Committee for a 3-year term expiring June 30th, 2017.
So moved.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
I also seek your confirmation for the appointment of Nicolina Bischoff to the Council on Aging for a 3-year term expiring June 30th, 2017.
So moved.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
And the final request is to the East Chelmsford Harmony Park Redesign and Renovation Committee. Seek the appointment of confirmation of Wendy Batchelder for a term ending June 30th, 2015.
So moved.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks. Okay, and we have a couple sets of minutes. Regular meeting minutes for June 16th, 2014. Do we have any edits, updates, corrections?
No.
Okay, have a motion?
Make a motion to approve regular meeting minutes of June 16th, 2014.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and we have minutes for October 6th, 2014. Any updates, edits, corrections? Okay.
Make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of October 6, 2014.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We're to selectmen liaisons and reports. Janet, how about if we start with you?
All right, let me get it out. Okay, so last week we had another meeting on the town government archive project, and if folks want to go out on archive.org, they'll find probably a little over a half a dozen Board of Selectmen meetings starting March 6, 1995 through December 2nd, 1996. And Pat and I will be working together to tag these so that they're searchable. And so that's just an ongoing project.
Is that like, when you do graffiti on a wall or something like that? Isn't that called tagging?
It is.
Tagging, yeah. It is
You know that, Pat.
It is. Very good.
Didn't think I knew that.
Right from the inner city.
Well, aren't you hip? Pat and I attended the Veterans Day ceremony at Chelmsford Crossing today. That was a wonderful ceremony. It was a small ceremony, but it was wonderful. They honored their veterans. They're at a residence there at Chelmsford Crossing, along with some of the spouses. So I just want to say congratulations again to all of them, and thank you for your service. Tomorrow is Veterans Day, unfortunately. I'm going to be hopping on a plane in about 6 hours, so I will be gone the entire day. So I will not be able to attend the event, but just want to say, wish everyone a very happy Veterans Day, and to all our veterans, including Ms. Wocius, thank you for serving. Thank you for your sacrifices so that we can have our freedom.
Bob, how about you?
I will be there tomorrow for the 11/11/11. And that's it. That's all I have tonight.
Okay.
Oh,
Matt?
wait a minute.
What?
I gotta talk about.
I thought you might.
Oh, okay. You want me to? Yeah. Okay. The Carol Cleven tree that's outside the school administration building, we finally have gotten the what do you call it? The plaque, the granite and the plaque installed this week. Special thanks to Jeff Hardy. And it looks great.
Mhm.
If you haven't been to it, take a look. And also thanks to Paul.
Okay. Matt?
All right, great. Also want to wish everyone a happy Veterans Day tomorrow. I hope to see most of you, anyone who is available to come out at Veterans Memorial Park next to McCarthy at 11 o'clock. It's always very well attended. Lots of great speakers who can share lots of stories. It's great for the children who come and attend, who can learn about all the veterans in our community. And I hope to see a lot of folks there. I will remind everyone my office hour location has changed to Panera and Drum Hill, Thursdays from 5 to 6. It's got a little bit more going on than the Java room, but there's still plenty of tables and plenty of room to talk if you'd like to discuss anything. And I just also want to put in a plug for some of our Chelmsford websites again that I'm hoping we can maybe get more people using. Our Chelmsford Now website, which there's a link off our town website. There's a lot of great information about community events that are going on that aren't really sponsored by the town. So I would encourage everyone to check that out and just to continue to use our request tracker that's on the town website. I was looking at that recently, and I think this month you saw six new cases. 5 of them had already been resolved, and a lot of other cases that had been acknowledged. Just another plug to the town staff. Every time you go on there, you can see all the potholes that they've been fixing, and tree branches out of the road and things like that. It looks like we're doing a really great job with that, Paul. So thank you.
The Civic website.
The Civic Facebook page?
Yeah.
Is,
Facebook, yeah.
Oh, yeah, we do have a Civic Facebook page that we're always posting new things on, so I would encourage everyone to like that. We seem to get 1 or 2 new likes every day, so things are going really well there. If you just type in Chelmsford Civic or Civic Committee in your search on your Facebook page, you should be able to find us very easily. And Bob and I are friends, so you can go to our page.
Oh.
All right, George?
Being Veterans Day tomorrow, I just wanted to thank all the veterans who have given their service to this great country, make this country a great country. And tomorrow, Captain Jackson will be out there, and if she does half as good a job, she's sitting back there laughing. If she does half as good a job as she usually does, it'll be a great day and a great tribute to our veterans. So, thank you, Captain Jackson.
That it? Okay. Just a couple of things. First of all, I want to congratulate Gail Bowden, who was recently promoted to lieutenant on the Chelmsford Police Department. First woman to attain that rank. So good job to her, and looking forward to seeing her still on the streets as we go forward. This is our last meeting before Thanksgiving, so I just wanted to mention about the LRTA, as you may know, between after Thanksgiving and until the end of January, runs a bus to the Pheasant Lane Mall on Saturdays. This year, they will also run one on the Friday after Thanksgiving. So you can catch that bus up in Drum Hill or Vinyl Square if you want to head up to Pheasant Lane Mall. So, and then every Saturday through December and January. The one book winner.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure everybody voted. The winner was The Sandcastle Girls by Chris Bojalian. So you can start reading that book now. There will be a kickoff for the One Book program during the Sunday of Winterfest in February 8th, I believe it is. So looking forward to reading that book and seeing what that's about. And I also want to mention, Paul, about the town line sign at Drum Hill. Did not our DPW do that?
Yes, yeah, it was
I
sort of
thought so.
disappointing
Oh,
to
the
see
newspaper.
recognition given to the city of Lowell.
The
and to
Lowell
their-
DPW.
Yeah, the work was coordinated between our Public Works Director and the City of Lowell's Public Works Director, but the work was actually done by the Chelmsford folks, which is why it says town line, not city line.
Uh-huh.
Ah.
Lowell. So, yeah, that was a little disappointing to see that letter, because there were a number of inquiries, and we were on it. Anyway, I thank you for acknowledging the work by the Chelmsford Public Works to get that work done.
Maybe we
Okay.
can send them a little note. I'm sure they
Yeah.
would post it in that same column, because the remarks seemed a little snarky the way it was written.
Yeah.
So maybe we
Yeah.
can
Right.
clarify.
Oh, again, the snarky word.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I guess that's
Yeah.
my new favorite word.
And one other thing, just to go on the veterans theme, tomorrow evening at 5:30, the Chelmsford Lodge of Elks will be hosting a dinner. All veterans can eat for free. The rest of the community is welcome, and it's a $10 charge if you're a non-veteran. And I'm looking forward to the ceremony tomorrow, but just want to remind everybody that, as you mentioned about Captain Jackson, she is one of the best veterans agents. She's hiding back there now. That we have in this state. She does so much, not just for the veterans and the active duty personnel in Chelmsford, but she helps out surrounding communities too. And a lot of what is done, by her, by the other organizations in town, is done behind the scenes. And it's great to have the ceremonies to recognize all the veterans, but we do so much more than just, fly the flag and shoot the muskets. So I look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow at 11 o'clock. And do we have any press here? Looks like they have departed, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.